Let's begin by exploring the creation of the universe, which starts with God. God possesses energy, and this energy is known as consciousness. Within God's consciousness, there are three fundamental types of energy. The first is the energy of happiness and love. Happiness is the interaction with oneself, while love is the interaction with others. This same energy manifests differently as either happiness or love. The second type of energy is the energy of eternity, and the third is the energy of knowledge. These three energies are inherent in God, and the soul is a fragment of God. There is the whole, and then there is a part of this whole. This part is also individual. Just as God is a person, so the soul is also a person. And similar to God, the soul also has consciousness, and it possesses energies, though they interact with the soul in different ways. For instance, God is completely filled with these energies. He is full of spiritual energy of eternity, happiness, and knowledge. He embodies these energies in their entirety. However, an individual soul, a small part of God, might be fully filled, partially filled, or even empty of these energies. In the material world, all souls experience a significant deficiency in these energies. Generally, we categorize souls into two groups. The first group consists of perfect souls, which are completely filled with the energies of happiness, eternity, and knowledge, and dwell in the spiritual world. The second group includes souls that experience a severe lack of these energies, eternity, happiness, and knowledge. These souls reside in the material world, and they lack these energies of eternity, happiness, and knowledge. This raises a question: why is there such a deficiency? Is it because they cannot acquire these energies? Why is there an abundance of these energies in the spiritual world but a lack here? The reason is that the soul can absorb the energies of eternity, knowledge, and happiness only when it gives them away. The soul can only give away these energies through renunciation, which can only occur through love. For instance, a mother might sacrifice her life for her child out of love, or a husband might sacrifice his life in battle for his wife. In essence, renunciation is only possible through love. But in the material world, all souls primarily love themselves. They are in love with themselves. And this self-love leads the soul into a state of self-contemplation. The soul watches over itself, observes itself. It isn't inclined to help others, but self-contemplates, mostly monitoring itself. And in the material world reside the souls that watch over themselves. This state of the soul is called the soul sleep. Everyone sleeps here. You see, when someone sleeps energetically, they are weakened. They can't run a race in their sleep. They can't rejoice, except in rare instances. Someone in their sleep might laugh and start kicking. But this is all a spontaneous escape from the state of sleep. Generally, we know that if someone is asleep, it means they are not as energetically active as someone who is awake. Therefore, we divide the souls into two categories. There are awake souls, which intensely absorb and expel energies of eternity, happiness, and knowledge. Through these awake souls, these three energies flow very intensely. They are under the influence of spiritual time. What does that mean? It means that they constantly increase the amount of energy of eternity, happiness, and knowledge. This amount of energy increases more and more. Souls, for example, live in the spiritual world, and their energetic potential always grows infinitely. And they are increasingly happy, increasingly knowledgeable, and increasingly eternal inside. This all grows infinitely. And therefore it is said that in the spiritual world there is eternal life, because they are in a state of ever-increasing happiness. But in the material world it's the opposite. The more a soul is immersed in itself and thinks about itself, the more it falls asleep. When it sleeps, it loses energy, there is an energy loss. And suppose if we compare a human and a microbe, the soul is the same. But in a human body, the soul can energetically support the human body. And in a microbe's body, it cannot support the human body. It can only support a microbe. It only has the strength for one microbe. The energy of support depends on the degree of sleep. The more deeply a soul sleeps, the less developed the life. For example, in a tree, the soul sleeps very deeply, and therefore the tree's energy suffers greatly. The energies of eternity, knowledge, and happiness do not pass through a tree as they do through a human. A rabbit has less energy of eternity than a human, and generally all animals have less energy of eternity than humans, because there is higher quality energy and there is lower quality energy. For example, lower quality energy is directed into the physical body. A dog, for example, if you look at it, you can see it has a lot of prana. It runs so fast it doesn't even stop. When a person runs and is already gasping for air, tongue out, but the dog doesn't care. It keeps running without any strain. Similarly, a wildebeest can run for long distances without any fatigue. Therefore, we cannot be compared to animals in terms of the amount of prana. They definitely have much more prana. But what kind of prana is there? There is prana connected with matter, and there is prana connected with the subtle energy body, or even with the spiritual body. And of course, in the subtle energy body, prana can perform deeper functions. For example, it can activate intelligence. In animals, prana does not go into intelligence. It goes into the body, which is why they are very robust, strong. In contrast, in humans, prana predominantly nourishes intelligence rather than the body. This is why humans exhibit intelligence, understanding, and problem-solving abilities, while animals do not, as prana does not flow into their intelligence. Consequently, the more a living being is asleep, the more energy accumulates in its physical body, leading to a decrease in its overall amount. If you compare grass and a tree, the tree has hundreds, maybe thousands times more energy than the small grass. From the point of view of life form, they both sleep deeply, but the energy in the grass has significantly decreased because it has been sleeping for a long time. It has been in such a state of sleep for many hundreds of lives, and the longer the sleep, the smaller the forms. From a huge tree, the soul turns into a blade of grass, meaning it maintains just a tiny body of a blade of grass. Then it even turns into a microbe, a microbial body, further into something like a paramecium. This is a process of degradation. When the soul has completely fallen asleep, still the soul remains eternal. It is alive, and it thinks, I can't do this anymore. I want to live. Then a reverse stage of development begins. Often this reverse stage occurs as a result of contact with holiness. When holy people walk the earth, touching trees, animals, these living beings begin to evolve. Their path was descending, they were gradually falling asleep, but then the energy started to rise again. We are discussing the evolution of energies of eternity, happiness, and knowledge in the soul, and contact with the soul. Now let's move on to our physical body. Besides the soul, we also have a physical body which is divided into two parts. Modern scientists do not know that our body consists of two parts. They think only of one part. They believe that there is only a physical body, and thinking is a combination of nerve impulses, as one of the scientists called it, the second signaling system, implying the work of nerve impulses. And he believed that they created consciousness and that Homo sapiens means a very deep, complex operation of nerve impulses. That means matter is primary and spirit is secondary. First matter organized itself, then consciousness arose and began to operate. But it's unclear how matter was organized if there is no consciousness, how it organized itself without consciousness. Science is silent on this issue. They consider it to be so. Thus they perceive the truth, but ancient Vedic scriptures believe that there is a soul. It gives consciousness to both the subtle energy body and the physical body. The process of consciousness transmission implies that the soul overall is not the possessor of energy. We are not possessors of the energies of eternity, knowledge, and happiness. We always request them, and we do so through desire. And this desire is called the desire to live, to know, and to love, three desires. When a person wants to live, as a result of this desire to live, since we cannot live in this world without a material and subtle energy body, prana first enters the subtle energy body. Desire to live means prana. Prana first enters the subtle energy body, and then it enters the physical body. Without entering the subtle energy body, prana cannot enter the physical body. Therefore, the subtle energy body is more important than the physical body. When a person wants to love, the energy of love first enters the subtle energy body, then the physical body. And when a person wants to know, the energy of knowledge first enters the subtle energy body, then the physical body. The question arises, where does it come from? It comes from God, who is also present in the body. The Vedas say that a person has two souls in the body. At least two, because for women it varies. Sometimes two souls live, sometimes 3, 4, 6, 8, and so on. For example, a non-pregnant woman has two souls living inside her, the oversoul and the individual soul. And if a woman is pregnant, then she has 4 souls inside her body. The oversoul lives inside her, which manages her body, and she herself is an individual soul that asks for energy from the oversoul. There is also an individual soul in the womb of the mother, and the oversoul is present there as well, and the little soul asks the Lord for energy. The child in the mother's womb has its own personal relationship with the Lord. When an individual soul wants to live, the oversoul, or the Lord, who is behind the soul, sends prana to the subtle energy body and physical body. It happens as if by magic. By magic means at the command of the oversoul, by God's will. God commands, and if we want, then energy begins to move through our body, as if by our will. Suppose I want to live, and by the command of God, prana first enters the subtle energy body from the cosmos, and then it enters the physical body. I have a wish, and God commands. As soon as a person wants to live, prana immediately enters the body. Now let's immediately draw practical conclusions. For example, a person doesn't want to live. Suppose a loved one has passed away. Then one thinks, what shall I do in this world alone? Like in the song, without you, without your love, I can, of course, live. Without you, without your love, I can't live a day. And accordingly, the person misses their loved one, suffers. And when one thinks, I don't want to live, at that time God says, well, if you don't want to live, then you won't. Sometimes a person may want to live, and sometimes they may not. When they do not wish to live, prana does not enter the body. When they desire to live, prana flows in. Thus a person can pass away. When a loved one passes away, a person lingers for a bit longer, and then they also pass away. Why? Because they think, without you, without your love, I cannot live even a minute. It's crucial to understand that prana, the energy of love, does not always flow into us evenly. For instance, if someone feels disillusioned with love, as expressed in the song, gardens bloom only once a year, waiting for the spring of love just once. Gardens bloom only once in our souls. They are disillusioned with love, and they think, I have no happiness, no love, everything is bad. Similarly, someone disillusioned with knowledge might think, there is no knowledge. The world is a mess. Everyone is foolish. There is no knowledge. Everything is grim. Therefore, the intake of energy changes according to a person's attitude to this world. And so, my dear friends, try to understand this thing. Exactly your attitude towards life is the determining factor of how you will live. It's all about your attitude. And there are three main types of attitudes. The first is, I want to help people worship God, and I want to live not for myself, to live selflessly all the time. This is the first attitude. This is the most energetically strong position of the soul, in which the energies of eternity, happiness, and knowledge circulate very actively inside. It moves very actively because this is called life in pure goodness. This life in pure goodness leads to a powerful flow of energy. When you want to give energy, it enters you, because otherwise it cannot enter. The soul generally cannot absorb energy without giving it away. It will never enter any other way. Therefore, the only way for a person to live very happily, eternally, and with knowledge is to constantly want to give their life, to help others. This is the best state in which our life can be carried out. This is called a life in pure goodness or a life of service. Of course, above pure goodness, there is also spiritual life. This is an even higher concept. It's not just about selfless life, but about surrendering to God fully. Not just to help people, but surrender to God, to the Supreme Being. Passionate life is less energetic. And a person thinks, I am ready to take care only for my dear ones, for all that is mine, my country, my family, my work, my city. I only care for what belongs to me. This is a life of passion. A person thinks they are unselfishly oriented. In reality, it's hidden selfishness. So let's say a man falls in love with another woman and thinks, oh, this is no longer mine. My love is there. So goodbye my children, goodbye my wife, goodbye everyone, because this is no longer mine. What I love is mine. And this is no longer mine. The same happens when changing countries. Now this is my country, for this I am passionate. That country is no longer mine, and so on. Thus, in a person of passion, the concept of selflessness changes depending on the circumstances. In fact, they live selfishly, live for themselves, but they have an expanded egoism, and so, energetically, their life is less active than that of people in pure goodness. Energy moves worse, therefore they're less active. And energy moves even worse for degrading people who say, I want to live for myself, that's it, I need no one, I want to live for myself. This is real normal life, it should be good for me. And accordingly, since you do not give the energy of happiness, eternity, and knowledge, it enters you much worse. Therefore, it is very important to understand, to have very strong, pure energy flow through oneself, a person must elevate their understanding of the meaning of life. One must elevate the level of understanding of the meaning of life, and then the energy of consciousness will develop the person, because this energy can be of a different quality. The purest, most elevated energy of consciousness is needed for intelligence. A less pure one is needed for the mind. Ego requires even purer energy of consciousness than intelligence. Ego is the most subtle energetic structure in a person. It needs very pure energy of consciousness. And when a person's selfishness turns into selflessness, then the soul awakens. Ego is the sense of oneself as a personality. The sense of oneself as a personality is the most subtle perception that exists in a person. The energy of intelligence or cognition is less subtle, and the least subtle of all energies is the energy associated with mental activity. Even coarser energy of consciousness acts in the physical body. And what distinguishes, say, plants from animals? In plants, the energy of consciousness moves exclusively in the physical body. It doesn't even engage in the mind. The mental space is weakly filled with energy, and therefore plants have no developed mind. Thoughts and emotions are in the mind. This is all mental activity, but plants lack such mental activity because the mind is not engaged. The energy flows only into the physical body, only into the tree, the plant itself, and that's why they say, wooden head. That means their mental activity does not engage, and their thinking is like that of a tree. In animal forms of life, the energies of eternity, knowledge, and happiness start to penetrate the manas, the subtle body of the mind, the subtle energy framework. In this subtle energy framework, activity begins. The energy of consciousness acts more actively, and so animals can display emotions, because in the mental space there are emotions, thoughts, the movement of prana is already felt there. Because plants are motionless, they don't move. If a living being directs the energy of consciousness into their mental space, then accordingly, movement begins there. Animal body is a higher form of life. And if the energy of elevated consciousness goes into intelligence, then it's a human form of life. And if the energy of elevated consciousness goes into the ego, it's not just a human form of life, it is a holy person. Such a person moves beyond the notion of themselves as someone meant to enjoy this world, this life. A saint is someone who believes that they are not meant to enjoy, but that only God should enjoy. They should always serve God, and thus the energetic evolution of consciousness progresses gradually. I remembered a song. Let's listen to this song. This song is quite intricate and challenging to understand, but in reality the words speak for themselves, about a single spirit against matter. This is a revo-evolution, a combination of revolution and evolution. A person must be a revolutionary for evolution to occur. Evolution here means that the single spirit becomes stronger than matter, awakening true needs in a person. It says, I want to live without a hidden agenda. That means I want to live genuinely selflessly. I really want to live selflessly. I want to worship, to serve God, and to conquer matter with spirit, to become spiritual, not material. In this struggle we constantly live, my dear friends, and in this struggle there are certain stages. The first stage, the single spirit enters the subtle energy body and begins to actively live there. This turns plant life into animal life. Then the single spirit enters intelligence because the subtle energy body has three components. There's the framework, the energy of the mind, the framework. There's intelligence, a structure built on the base of the main subtle energy body, which allows a person to develop, to change. And there's also one's sense of self-worth or the perception of oneself as a personality. And these intermittent changes in consciousness occur because consciousness goes into deeper realms of being. First, consciousness activates in the mind, in our subtle energy framework. Then it's an animal form of life. Animals can think, feel, move, unlike plants, but they cannot analyze because consciousness has not yet entered their intelligence. When consciousness enters intelligence, a person begins to understand the meaning of life, trying to figure everything out. And that's still not enough. Because to really awaken the soul, consciousness must penetrate the ego, your sense of self as a personality. And this transformation of the perception of oneself, the sense that I am an eternal servant of God, not an eternal master in this world, is the most crucial revo-evolution. A revolution that leads to the ultimate evolution occurs when the soul wants to live without double standards, and it wants to continually dedicate and surrender itself to God. And this song began with the words of a saint, in English, about the need to surrender oneself to God. The purpose of human life is to serve God. We have generally analyzed the evolution of consciousness, and now we are talking about a specific little aspect. How to activate the energy that operates within the subtle energy body of the mind, this mental framework in which we live, to its full potential, leading us to, first, to a feeling of vivid life colors, feeling truly alive, not dead, to truly feel the sun, water, and fresh air, to really feel nature and people who surround you, so that you could sense the energy of life, feeling truly alive. The first task is to activate the energy flow in the subtle energy body. The second task is observing how this activation enhances your health, allowing you to live a long and fulfilling life. Live long and do good deeds. If you live a short life, you'll do fewer good deeds. If you live longer, you'll do more. This is the mindset we should adopt. Third, you are not just healthy and live a full life, but you can also establish energetic interactions with the people around you and feel good in these interactions too. Ultimately, it all comes down to strength. For example, the computer I use for this lecture. Without power, the battery drains and the screen goes dark. Without energy, I can't continue speaking. Why? Because without energy, there is no life. Life begins with energy, which is why this topic is so crucial. Of course, we've established that the soul is paramount. We've covered this from the start, so there's no need to review it. The most important thing is for the energy of consciousness to enter a person's egoism and melt it away, making the person selfless. But this is a gradual process called spiritual practice. Right now, we're not discussing spiritual practice. We're talking about living virtuously. Because only in a healthy body will there be a healthy spirit. If you can't live correctly, you won't be able to engage in spiritual practice because your body will trouble you. It will demand bathroom visits. You'll suffer from hemorrhoids, cry, suffer, moan, etc. And you won't have time to pray because you'll be attending hospitals. In short, the body will simply trouble you. You won't be able to develop properly if you don't invest the right energy into your body. Because in the end, the body also depends on the energy we interact with. Let's now reflect on this level. Study this topic. What kind of energy fuels our subtle energy body? Our subtle energy body is nourished by the same types of energy, the energies of happiness, eternity, and knowledge. These energies operate on a subtle material level. On this subtle material level, the energy of eternity in this world turns into the energy of fresh air. It's not oxygen. It's called prana, or the energetic component of life. For example, we're sitting in a lecture hall where oxygen is poorly circulated. People feel stuffy and hot because a lack of oxygen also automatically means a lack of prana. No air, no prana, and people can't listen to the lecture. They don't have the strength. I place my hands like this in front of people and start to breathe. Look, now everyone put your hands up. Do you think the air is connecting us right now or not? Is the air connecting us? Is oxygen flowing from me to you, through the computer from me to you? Can you breathe the oxygen from me just because you're listening to the lecture? Now I'll show you a little trick. Now put your hands up and you'll start feeling like it's easier to breathe just by looking at me. As if the wind starts blowing from me, from the computer to you. Look, now. So did you feel it? Was it blowing?
Almost got chilled, Dr. Torsunov.
Did you feel it or not? Hands are still up. Did you feel the prana? Like there's a freshness coming through, right? But it's not oxygen, it's prana. It's pure prana because oxygen doesn't travel through the computer. But you can send prana anywhere. You can even send it to another planet. My mother-in-law passed away 10 days ago. 11 days ago on the 31st, she passed away. She went along the solar path. She went beyond. She already arrived at her destination. And I still send her prana. I send this energy of consciousness just through memory. Anyone can do this. She's already on a completely different planet, very far from here. But since we are connected, I can even peek through her at what's happening on that planet. It turns out the colors there are much brighter than here. This is the solar path. And when she passed the earthly level, a yellow orb suddenly appeared above her head. I understood what a halo was. We've seen it in paintings, right? Those who come by the solar path, the angels, have a yellow one above their head. She also had such a yellow thing appear above her head. I thought, wow, cool, I liked all this. Now she is on that planet and it's so beautiful there. The colors are very vivid. And her subtle energy body, her face changed. She became so tanned, with very big eyes, bigger than ours. And she has such a beautiful, joyful face. Her subtle energy body transformed to adapt to life on that planet. And why did she end up on that planet? Because the last 4 years she constantly served in the temple, did something for God. And her subtle energy body became like that as a result of those 4 years of life. Before that, she lived an ordinary life. But we took her to Vrindavan, a holy place. She lived there for a couple of months, and such were the results. And even there you can send prana. When I run, I send her energy. It becomes easier for her. Her subtle energy body reshapes faster, making it all easier. Always, when someone passes away, it's the greatest stress, and all relatives suffer because the person who died needs energy. Energy for the final journey. That's the way it is. It's not only between us that prana moves. We may be in different parts of the earth or on different planets. If you think about the person, you can send them prana. Can you imagine how far this energy can reach? It's not material energy. It's a subtle energy matter, something completely different. It's not what you think. But overall, here on earth, we can only receive prana through fresh air. In any case, to properly fill up with prana, one must go outside into the fresh air. And now I'll explain why. Because there are actually 5 elements of nature, not just the 3 I listed. There is the element of space. Space means open space. Space means open space. By the way, worrying means that you're giving away energy. And at that time, you should think about God. If you think strongly about God, then everything calms down. You calm down. Suddenly your energy starts flowing smoothly again. When you worry, you can't give your best, but by focusing on God and praying, the flow of energy resumes. You give adequately and meet all needs. There are 5 elements in total. The very first element is space. The element of space determines the possibility of action for all other elements. Here on Earth, we are like characters from the Ice Age. The opossums acknowledge their ignorance to their elephant sibling. Although we may not admit it, but we are also stupid. We're stupid. We isolated ourselves from the energy of space. In the past, humans lived in caves. You know, it's not very pleasant to sit in a cave all the time, and people always wanted to go out for fresh air. You can sleep in a cave, no one will bother you there. You make a fire in front of the cave, and no animal will dare to cross the fire. Nowadays, we spend most of our time indoors, lacking the energy of space. As a result, elements like prana, water, air, and fire do not fully enter us. Without these elements, we become exhausted and weakened. Why? Because without exposure to open spaces, our energy is depleted. And therefore, you need to understand the first rule in life. For the subtle energy body, these energies of eternity, knowledge, and happiness are essential. A person cannot live normally without them. The subtle energy body is not nourished by proteins, fats, carbohydrates. Proteins, fats, carbohydrates nourish the physical body, you understand? And the physical body depends on the activity of the subtle energy body. If the subtle energy body is inactive, nothing will be assimilated in the physical body. Nothing will function in it, because without the normal life of the subtle energy body, the physical body is just a corpse. And in the subtle energy body, these three energies that give life, the energy of eternity, knowledge, and happiness, they exist in this world in the form of three elements. And these elements fill our subtle energy body with life. The first is the energy of eternity, which transforms into the energy of fresh air. I repeat again, fresh air doesn't just mean oxygen. Oxygen too, but not only oxygen. For example, you say, I have enough oxygen in my room. There's enough oxygen in the room, but not enough prana. There's not enough freshness. Freshness is not oxygen. When a person breathes oxygen, they feel calmness. They breathe and become calm. But prana brings freshness, vigor, strength, the feeling that I can act. And this prana exists only outside. It doesn't exist indoors. Let's say I open the window a little bit. I get a bit of energy of space, and a little prana starts to seep in, so there's a bit of prana in the room. But if you go outside, there's an abundance of it. And the colder the weather, the more prana there is. When it's below zero, prana goes off the scale. But a person can't absorb it because it's too strong. When the temperature is below zero, very far below zero, the prana is so strong that people are afraid to go outside, because the influence of prana is too strong. But if a person has very developed pranic channels in their body, they can actually walk outside in just their underwear, even when it's below zero. For example, I trained my pranic channel. I was in a very cold city. It is called Aktobe. When we were in Aktobe, we flew there from Almaty. We found that there was warm water in the bathhouse, but one can't really recover much in warm water. And I thought, why do we need this warm water when it's minus 20 degrees outside? In Aktobe, it was minus 20 degrees, and I went outside in swimming shorts. I put on mittens and a hat because only the fingers, head, and feet get cold. And I put on flip-flops on my feet and went out. And I began to cleanse my subtle energy body from energetic blockages. I started cleansing energy layers with the help of strong, powerful prana energy. For instance, if it's above zero and you go outside, you won't be able to cleanse 5 energy layers. You're just filling up with this prana energy. But to cleanse 5 energy layers, you need to run. But if you go out at minus 20, then you don't even need to run. The prana energy starts cleansing your subtle energy body, even in a passive state. When you're in a warm country in summer, in the sun, but only on a very clear day, the sun will cleanse your subtle energy body. But there, it still takes 35-40 minutes to cleanse 1 energy layer at best. So when we're in a hot climate, we don't say that we can properly cleanse ourselves with the sun. But if you're in Israel, even in autumn, the sun is so strong that it cleanses 1 energy layer in 25 minutes. And there are almost no clouds there. You can go outside and cleanse your body using the energy of the sun every day. It's the same in the north. When it's below zero, you can passively cleanse your subtle energy body with prana every day. Prana enters you very intensely when it's far below zero. I stood for 20 minutes at minus 20 degrees. It took 20 minutes to cleanse the entire subtle energy body with prana. And then I went to the sauna to warm up. What's the catch? The fact is that you filled the subtle energy body with prana, but the physical body got cold from this. Because the temperature is low and the physical body is cold. But the subtle energy body has been cleansed. It feels good. And I went to warm up. I cleansed 5 energy layers and also warmed up, meaning I also got the energy of fire. And then I got into the pool to cleanse 1 energy layer with water. And that was it. My cleansing was finished. Then I started experimenting. I thought, if prana enters the body so well when it's below zero, I'll try lying on the snow. I laid down on the snow. It was about minus 15 degrees there. I laid down on the snow and started studying how the cleansing goes through the snow. Snow is essentially water. But in fact, in the state of snow, water turns into prana. This is also cleansing with prana. I started cleansing with prana, lying on the snow. The cleansing speed is even faster than if you were cleansing using the energy of air. In about 7 minutes, all 5 energy layers were cleansed while lying on the snow. This is how we study how this world is arranged. Therefore, snow is also God's mercy. There's a lot of pure prana when everything is covered in snow. Why do people wait for snow? Because they feel pure prana at this time. They breathe pure energy of air, filling themselves with prana. And ice-cold water is pure ojas energy. Ojas energy is the energy of happiness. In the subtle material representation, the energy of happiness turns into water. And that's why for everyone, south means the sea. They go to the sea because they feel happiness there. And the energy of knowledge is solar energy. The energy of knowledge is represented by the sun. It's crucial to understand how knowledge and happiness intertwine. When you're in the sun, you cleanse your sense of happiness while absorbing knowledge. Conversely, when you're in water, you purify your knowledge and enhance your sense of happiness. This might seem complex at first. Both the sun and water carry knowledge and happiness simultaneously. When you're in water, the knowledge inside you becomes pure, and happiness becomes complete. When a person receives happiness from water, they become very calm. Calmness comes from water. When a person is in the sun, happiness becomes purified. If you have happiness, it will be cleansed. All toxins or negative happiness, incorrect happiness are removed by the sun. Only the right happiness remains, and the energy of knowledge begins to fill you. For instance, a snake in the sun becomes active, otherwise it remains motionless. This is the energy of knowledge that stimulates the snake to move. When people live in a hot climate, their speech is faster because the energy of knowledge flows faster due to the intensity of the sun. They are more refined. You see what real Georgian cuisine is? It's very sophisticated. Italians are also like this. There are 8 types of dressings and 8 types of olive oil, and you need to know what to add. You need to know what goes well with each kind of pasta. And indeed, it becomes very tasty when they cook like this. This means knowledge. The energy of the sun makes people sophisticated. But in the north, they give you a pile of noodles and you eat whatever you're given. When you live in the north, you eat what you're given, but in the south, everything is sophisticated. Okay, this is a complex issue. How do we generally perceive it? For the energy of knowledge to move normally, water is needed. For a proper flow of the energy of happiness, the sun is needed. We'll perceive it this way, okay? From the perspective of the energies themselves, water means happiness, and the sun means knowledge. Happiness has female energy, female nature, and female nature is represented by the moon, and the moon is created from the energy of water. The sun represents male nature, and male nature is knowledge. Eternity represents what kind of nature, female or male? Who wants to live more, a woman or a man? All women reply, "Of course women, Dr. Torsunov. Men go and die in war. They don't care." No, my dears, the energy of eternity is equally represented in both women and men. A woman thinks that she wants to live more. Everyone wants to live equally. Men fight against death while women run away from it. That's the difference. Men run towards death, trying to defeat it, while women flee from it. That's the whole difference between female and male nature. Both have a non-indifferent attitude towards eternity. They just relate to it differently. So what have we learned today? The framework of the subtle energy body, or manas in Sanskrit, needs nourishment. Without it, there is no life. The quality of life depends on contact with nature, which provides nourishment. Any nature is beautiful. When snow falls, a very pure, strong prana moves. One can increase willpower functions in winter. One can increase their energy, strength, and concentration. Winter enables all of this. People go to the mountains, to the Himalayas, to become yogis, to strengthen their will. They need prana energy, that's why they stay in the cold mountains. Mountains also give prana energy, the energy of eternity. When a person comes into contact with ice-cold water, they cleanse their subtle energy bodies. Their knowledge becomes very deep. A person can distinguish between good and evil. Their heart calms down, and their intelligence becomes unshakable. Staying in ice-cold water makes a person very calm, reasonable, and sober. They solve life's issues very soberly and have a deep understanding of everything. The energy of the sun gives a person the ability to be cheerful and happy. The feeling of happiness is purified. They truly enjoy life, and so on. These 3 elements are necessary for human life. This is all you need to understand now. Do you think that for life you only need sandwiches and sweet candies? In fact, nature is necessary for life. It's very important to understand this. Let's say people are in a state of depression. They lack the strength to make a good decision. In this case, they need fresh air. And not just fresh air, they need snow. Snow is a very high-quality, pure prana energy. Sub-zero air doesn't compare to snow. Snow is very pure and strong prana. Sub-zero temperature and wind are coarse prana, but snow is very high-quality, pure prana. It enables making the right decisions. When people come into contact with snow, they are able to deeply understand things, figure everything out, make the right decision, because their willpower begins to function correctly. People often underestimate the power of nature, whether it's the snow, winter, or icy water. It's hard to grasp it because its strength can be intimidating. People underestimate the nature of intense sun. They fear nature, but in truth it's also beautiful. When we were in the Emirates, we experienced purification through the sun. We soaked up in its rays. Likewise, snow, icy water, and sunlight all have the power to cleanse the body. All these elements bring happiness, give us the opportunity to live happily. So the first thing a person must learn and understand is that their subtle energy body has entered a state of a shriveled, angry dwarf. That means that people cannot absorb energy because they are shriveled, because their subtle energies move with very little force. People are barely alive, and this is detrimental for them. If you take an ordinary person who is not trained and put them in freezing sub-zero temperatures, they would probably die, because their energy will become overexcited. It will start moving poorly. Overexcitement or a frenzy will occur in the subtle energy body. Overexcitement is a very unpleasant sensation. The first thing we need to understand is that we are very weakened. We are very weakened, and all our problems stem from this weakness. For example, a doctor might advise against exposure to the sun, fresh air, or cold water because it can lead to death, and there is a deal of truth in it, because when a person's mental state is weakened and decompensated, their subtle energy body can no longer exist in such energies. It's pampered, it's weakened, it can't live happily. Energies should move normally in the body. For instance, once we ran in minus 26 degrees and then submerged ourselves in an ice hole. When I got out of there, I had to walk some distance. The wind was blowing. Walking afterward in the cold wind at the temperature minus 26, I felt my entire body enveloped by the pure energy prana. It was a profound experience of the purest cold water. The water was 0.5 degrees. These are such unforgettable sensations of real life. You feel prana, you feel the energy of water. The only thing missing there was the sun. In Kazan, during the summer, we went to the Blue Lake. The temperature in this lake is plus 4 degrees, even in summer, because there are springs gushing from the depths. And the temperature in the river that flows out of it is plus 7. We stood in this river under bright sunlight, and when we got out of this icy water, the sun started shining. You know, it's such an amazing effect. Then we went into a wood-fired sauna, then went back into the water. And then we started warming up in the sun. The sun was just incredible after that, when all these elements combine to their fullest extent. In the mountains where strong sunlight shines, snow covers the ground, and the water is icy. All elements are combined together. Sitting in icy water and then warming up in the sun while surrounded by snow offers an unparalleled combination of the elements, but only if you've recovered from the energetic collapse. To recover from it, start slowly. Begin by sitting in water at a moderate temperature around 28 degrees and do it gradually. Because water that's neither cold nor hot but medium is suitable for anyone. There are people who can't handle 28 degrees. For them, the warm comfort zone is somewhere around 31 or 32 degrees. At 32 degrees, the energy of water is also absorbed into the body, but very, very slowly. When we stood in 31-degree water in Dubai, we measured. It was 31 degrees. The sun was absorbed for 25 minutes, cleansing only one energy layer, and we stood in the water for 2 hours and 5 minutes. During this time, we cleansed exactly 5 energy layers using the energy of water. At 31 degrees, you need to stand in water for 2 hours and 5 minutes to cleanse all 5 energy layers. And we also cleansed 5 energy layers using the energy of the sun. There was a balance between cleansing with water and sun. It was an amazing state, to be in water without feeling it, as if water wasn't there. But the cleansing goes on, very gently, imperceptibly. Not like in an ice hole, of course, but the cleansing by the sun is good. It's good to cleanse using the energy of the sun. Because when you stand in water, the sun will never overheat you. And in such water, you don't freeze, and it cleanses for a long time. So it's convenient to stand in it and wait until the sun completely cleanses you. At the same time, you don't overheat. In this regard, such cleansing has its own charm. But you need to start cleansing with water at high temperatures. It will take just about half a year. You started nourishing the body with the energy of water, and it wants more powerful water energy. And what water energy is more powerful? Energy of cold water. And you start gradually lowering the temperature. Water below room temperature is cold for most people. There are people for whom even 25-degree water is cold. How to determine if the water is cold for you? When a person stands in water, they sometimes shiver, then calm down, then shiver, then calm down. But when the water is cold for a person, they shiver constantly. They get into the water like this barar constantly. They shake like a vibrating massager. If you get into the water and you're like a vibrating massager, it means you need to get into warmer water. And this doesn't mean it's for lifetime, because the time comes when you get used to the energy of water, the body gets used to it. It processes the energy of water in larger volumes. All people look roughly the same on the outside, but some are more Chinese looking, some are more Scottish looking. The Scottish ones are almost 2 meters tall, the Chinese ones are about 1 meter tall. There are different variations, but the essence is the same. We are all humans. There are people who possess a lot of energy of nature. And what does it do? It increases longevity. It allows a person to live an active lifestyle. It gives a person the opportunity to build happy relationships in the family, to achieve success at work. Energy of nature does everything, you understand? The quality of life is completely different. How do people change their quality of life? They say if you have money, you'll have a high quality of life. Or if you have power, fame, you'll have a high quality of life. In fact, the quality of life depends only on the free energy of nature. It's absolutely free. You go outside and everything is free. Fresh air, water, and sun are free. But this is for now. I don't know what will happen next. Everything is constantly changing now. They'll study the topic, and the sun will be for money. Fresh air for money, sun for money. They'll lock everyone up in their homes and let them out for money. They'll realize that there's value in this. People don't understand it yet, finding value in houses. A place with no energy is considered of great value. People save money all their lives to build a house, but what gives a person health, strength? It has no value. That's how interestingly our world is arranged. So, my dear friends, the very first and main thing is to gradually bring your energy level to normal. What does normal mean? It means I can dive into an ice-cold water and feel no adverse effects. I can walk outside in sub-zero temperatures without any discomfort, can stand under the blazing sun and remain unaffected. This means that the energy in the body functions in accordance with the standards of life on Earth. My mother-in-law needed to adjust her subtle energy body to survive on the higher planet. That means she underwent a restructuring of her subtle energy body. When she passed away, she hovered in the air for 2 days, crying and saying goodbye to us, and we prayed for her. Then I noticed one night when I opened my eyes, as I was constantly in contact with her, she was crying. And I saw a light starting to emanate from the top of her head. A pillar of light began to form. I thought, wow, I already knew then that she would follow the solar path because the Lord shows me everything in my heart. He has no secrets from me. The glow from the top of her head started moving lower and lower, and her subtle energy body began to transform into something more radiant than ours. We have an earthly subtle energy body, but her subtle body was meant for a higher planet, and a brighter subtle energy body started forming right before my eyes. And then when it was almost fully formed, at some point the next day I noticed she was spinning, and then suddenly I saw something happening to her. I saw her moving away from us, then I looked closer. I saw that she was on some kind of chariot, with 2 charioteers standing on either side, and she wasn't looking where she was going, but looking at us because she was saying goodbye. And only when she crossed the earthly level and God's grace began to surround her, she started to calm down and began to notice her surroundings. There was beauty all around. Everything was very beautiful there. She started to see it. And when she arrived, she looked down and saw such a beautiful planet. What does beautiful mean? Imagine, for example, there are colors of the mountains and there are colors of the city. You can feel the difference in brightness, right? If you multiply colors of the city by 100, that's the intensity of colors where she ended up. Maybe not by 100, but by 50. That's the kind of vibrancy of colors. This creates an overwhelming sense of happiness. Why does God place beings in such vibrant environments? Because He knows they won't relax there, but will continue to serve Him. The more selfless a person is in their service, the higher their placement. God wishes us more happiness in life, but we often don't deserve it. For instance, someone coming from Siberia to the south might feel overwhelmed. They might say, Dr. Torsunov, I was productive there, but here I struggle. This means they need to return to Siberia to grow and develop. People often choose to go to resorts to relax and enjoy themselves. But she went to higher planets to engage in spiritual practice more effectively. Imagine the same thing, only the person doesn't enjoy all this, but simply thinks about God during this time. Surrounded by these colors of happiness, people constantly think about God and serve Him and don't enjoy this atmosphere. These are the heavenly planets on the solar path. This is the minimum level we need to achieve, the minimum program for this life. The maximum is the spiritual world, where there is no suffering, only worshiping God, but only holy people can get there. So the first thing a person should do in this life is to fill their life with energy. Imagine 2 emaciated people are crawling and one looks at the other, who suddenly hits his head on the asphalt. One says, "What are you doing? We didn't agree to this. Are you doing hurdles or something?" Nobody needs such a life. One should live a normal, fulfilling life, to have a lot of energy. and this depends on the energy of nature. And gradually one needs to accustom their subtle energy body to the energy of nature. This needs to be done. One shouldn't be afraid of the air, but rather embrace it, immerse oneself in it, and try to get used to it. Of course, not at minus 26 degrees like when I ran at such temperature and my cheeks got frostbitten and I still have these little spots here. It's like a mark of my encounter with that place. Because minus 23 degrees is already a critical temperature for the skin, it starts to burn beyond that point. If you stay out for too long, some body parts may be frostbitten. But still, the sensations from that run in the icy air were wonderful, of course, just extraordinary sensations, and after swimming in the water too. But if a person is not trained, for example, how to understand which water you can swim in and which you can't. If you're shaking, then you shouldn't be in it anymore, which means you need to stay in warmer water. If you stay in water and feel fine, you shiver once and then feel fine again. This means that in general, the energy of the water is moving normally inside you. If you're running, let's say, in freezing temperatures and your breathing isn't constricted. My mobile phone said it was minus 20 degrees, so I agreed to go for a run, but in reality it was minus 26. My mobile phone deceived me. When I started running, I felt my breathing becoming restricted. I tried to breathe and thought, wow, is this how I'm reacting to minus 20? Strange, but it was actually minus 26. And then nevertheless I got used to it, meaning my breathing became normal, everything was fine. When it's severely cold, you can't breathe, it's bitterly cold, this means it's too cold for you, be careful. Outside there may be a bitter cold wind. Sometimes the wind is blowing and it feels good and fresh, but sometimes it's bitter. That means the wind is too strong. When the sun overheats your head and burns, when it feels like your head is being squeezed in the sun, it means the sun is too strong. The elements are energies that can be absorbed gradually. For example, when I come to Israel on the first day, I get dizzy from the sun. But then, after 2 weeks, I can stand in the sun cleansing 5 energy layers, and I'm fine, no problems at all. I can walk in the sun for 2 hours without any problems because I'm trained and my body has gradually gotten used to the strong sun and started to live normally with it. And how can this solar energy be used? It kills all toxins, kills all cancer cells, removes excess weight, restores all functions, improves digestion, improves quality of life. The sun does all of this. The same goes for absorbing water. Let's say, when the body has learned to take in the energy of ice-cold water, immediately all inflammatory processes in the body are removed. Deep-seated resentment and grudges can be released from the heart, which is ready to forgive everyone. Cold water plays a significant role in this process. Adaptation to fresh air, white snow, or engaging in activities like running or walking in sub-zero temperatures restores your willpower. Your attention span, decision-making ability, and inner strength are influenced by air and these natural energies. Therefore, it's very important to learn how to make all these energies circulate normally in the body. You just need to understand that this happens naturally for children. A child only needs a few days to get used to water in an ice hole or strong sunlight, or to get accustomed to snow or to cold wind. But an old person already needs several months or even more to get used to it, because with age the body can no longer adapt energetically so quickly, so people differ from one another. There are young guys who can adapt quickly. There were guys who had never run before and they just ran 17 kilometers with me. But for me to run 17 kilometers at the age of 50, it took 2.5 years to gradually work up to it without forcing my body. Similarly, you need to understand that the absorption of energy can be of different strengths. And this is already called asceticism practice. If you're simply in the water, this water energy enters you. And what kind of water energy enters? The colder the water, the stronger the energy that enters the body. In ice-cold water, the strongest water energy enters. When it has entered you, then what? Then you need to learn how to absorb it. If you're a child, let's say, then it's absorbed naturally into the child's body. But if you're 57 years old, you need to do static exercises, otherwise it won't be absorbed properly, even not at 57, but let's say at 25. There will be stress caused by water. You can swim in ice, cold water, let's say, 3 times a week, and then you'll develop inflammatory processes. You'll say, Dr. Torsunov, you promised us that ice-cold water doesn't do any harm to a person, so why did suddenly inflammatory processes start? It's because the energy of water has accumulated in your body, and what should it do? It starts moving strongly and excites everything in the body. To prevent this from happening, you need to combine being in water with static exercises. This means you need to learn stationary position of the body, and then pump the water energy into yourself. Try to activate it inside. When a person stands, everything swells. Why does that happen? You stand without moving. Swelling starts, legs swell. When you sit or stand, the whole body swells. Why does everything swell? What kind of swelling is that? Why does everything swell?
The water doesn't move.
Yes, water moves poorly through the body, it's stagnant, and in order for it to move normally, you need to do static exercises regularly, and gradually everything will get activated. You'll be able to stand without your body swelling when your subtle energy channels start to absorb the water energy and it moves normally there. And if it moves normally, then all inflammatory processes in the body are treated and your body heals. The same goes for dynamic exercises. For example, one lady is now walking for 4 hours. She is so enthusiastic she doesn't even notice how we were talking about her. Nature has lured her in. And prolonged, continuous movement helps absorb the energy of prana. And if a person runs, it's absorbed even more intensely. It's a completely different level of prana energy absorption when a person runs. When they walk, it's also good, but when they run, it's absorbed much more. It's a completely different level, and the quality of life will improve. Willpower functions will become stronger if a person runs. The same with the energy of the sun. A person, let's say, is simply staying in the sun just fills them. But for it to be absorbed, fasting is needed. When a person is in the sun while fasting, then the sun is absorbed and it simultaneously fills the person. This is an even more powerful practice. You don't eat anything, you drink water, and you go out in the sun, you even start to lose weight when the sun's energy starts moving. We are studying our subtle energy body's contact with the elements. We have dedicated this lecture to this very important topic. We have simply analyzed how it all works. This is a very important topic. Now, how does healing work in general? What is healing? Why does a person get sick? Let's say we have a general lack of energy of water. What does it do? It gives a person inflammatory processes in the body. Everything becomes inflamed due to the general lack of water energy. A general lack of air energy makes a person weak. A person asks, Dr. Torsunov, I'm lying in bed all the time. What's going on? This is a general lack of air energy. We'll go outside, take a walk. One says, I go out for a walk, but somehow I still feel only a little better. Then it becomes somehow difficult outside. That's because your subtle energy channels are already so weak that they don't absorb prana energy, and you need to go out for a walk every day for 3 to 4 months for all of this to start working. It won't work if you go outside just once. You need to do this regularly, walk regularly to activate the energy of your shrunken, dwarfed, subtle energy body. Just as there are stars called red dwarfs, when a person is in nature, one is not red, one is a blue dwarf. A shriveled blue dwarf. Their physical body may be big, but the subtle energy body is shriveled blue and dwarfed. And from this dwarfed, shriveled body, you need to make a normal one. Where should a person start? Simply increase contact with air, contact with water, and contact with the sun. You need to gradually increase it. Though doctors say, less, you need to do the opposite. Increase it. This is what you should understand. At first, you need to transform from a blue shriveled dwarf into a normal person. As a result of contact with nature, your subtle energy body will begin to recover, and it will be easy for you. How do you determine that everything is normal in your body, and you can do asceticism practices to the fullest? You feel comfortable in the wind brings you happiness, the sun brings happiness, and water brings happiness. You love all these elements, which means your subtle energy body has already become normal. It's already working normally for you. That's it. Now you can fully transition to asceticism practice, because asceticism practice starts to absorb this normal energy and use it for healing and cleansing your karma. So there are stages that need to be followed. The first stage, a person first fills up with energy, simply fills their subtle energy body with energy. The second stage is removing energetic blockages. This cleansing of blockages occurs through asceticism practice. If you just stay in water, for example, the blockages won't be removed. If you stay in the sun, the blockages won't be removed. For the energetic blockages to be removed, you need to perform asceticism practice. You need to push this energy through the body. When a person stands, they push the energy through the body like this. Energetic blockages are cleansed over 8, 9, 10 months through asceticism practices. All these asceticism practices should be done according to a schedule. What are these asceticism practices? Stationary position of the body, prolonged continuous movement, and water fasting. These are the 3 main asceticism practices. When a person follows the schedule, only after 9 months their main energetic blockages are cleansed. And only after this the organs begin to recover. Why? Because the organs lack energy. That's why they are shriveled and sick, because there's not enough energy. If the stomach lacks energy, it becomes sensitive. You eat fried food at night, you get a stomach ulcer. The doctor tells you, you have a stomach ulcer from eating fried food at night. No, my dears, it's because the energetic blockages there prevent the stomach from being strong. If it were strong, it would have digested that fried food. It wouldn't have become sick. But it can't digest because there's not enough energy. That's why an ulcer occurs. Therefore, first we have to remove energetic blockages. First we fill ourselves with the energy of nature and get used to it. Then we continue to cleanse energetic blockages. As soon as the blockages are cleansed, the healing of the physical body begins. This takes time. The older the person, the more time it takes to recover. Although you have removed energetic blockages and you live normally, you still have chronic diseases. They start to heal, and in about 1.5 to 2 years after you start performing asceticism practices, you already feel physically healthy. Some residual effects may still remain, but not as many. Then at the next stage, your physical illnesses disappear. These bad energies not only influence your physical body and subtle energy body, but they also affect your fate. And fate is represented by personal life and work. And there, these energy problems also exist. Next, your personal life begins to heal. It energetically improves. And you can talk with your spouse. You can forgive, ask for forgiveness. You can save the family. Or there may be improvement in your work. You see the sequence? First, the subtle energy body is filled with energy. Then, energetic blockages are cleansed. Then the physical body is healed. Only after this, the healing goes into fate. And when your fate has been more or less healed, then you become an energetically complete person and can live happily. And I dedicate the next song to such an energetically complete person. A person who performs asceticism practices in nature lives happily, and they don't have big problems. They can feel nature, people, work. They feel everything very well. Triumphant music. These trumpets mean triumph. It means victory. A person has overcome a certain level in their life, bringing their psychophysical body in good physical condition. Now one can serve God to the fullest. You can pray, do whatever you want. Nothing overburdens you. You feel that you can live normally and happily. How to do this correctly we will discuss in the next lecture. The energy of the sun, water, and air fills our subtle energy body. We need to consume it too. Otherwise, our subtle energy body turns into a blue, shriveled dwarf. Externally, everything looks fine, but inside, everything is bad. And therefore, a person can't live normally in a family, can't work, or has no health, and everything in their life is bad. Today, we are talking about the methodology of cleansing of the blockages in the subtle energy body. And we have discussed that in the subtle energy body, the energies of happiness, eternity, and knowledge move in the form of nature's energy. Nature itself gives us energy to nourish the subtle energy body. There's no need to invent anything here. Ordinary sun gives us the energy of tejas. Ordinary water gives us the energy of ojas. And ordinary fresh air gives us the energy of prana. All these energies work better in open spaces rather than indoors. For example, if you're sitting at home cleansing your subtle energy body in the sun through a window, it won't be the same cleansing as in an open space, because the contact with the sun is disrupted. The younger the body, the easier it is for passive cleansing methods to cleanse a person overall. For instance, for an infant, passive cleansing methods might be sufficient for complete recovery. That means a very young body absorbs nature's energies on its own. The energies of the sun, air, and water enter it naturally. Therefore, it might even be a good way to treat an infant, for example, from dynamic tension, by simply letting them lie outside in fresh air. I need to study how long a child or an adult can stay in fresh air when there's a light breeze for one energy layer to be passively cleansed. I don't know exactly. I need to study this topic. However, the older a person gets, the more asceticism practices they need to perform in order to maintain their health. Because as we age, even the energies of prana, water, and sun don't always completely replenish a person. Let's take a breastfed baby. When placed in water, the water completely fills their entire subtle energy body. But for an older person, this might not happen. If they're 70 years old, the water may not penetrate them as strongly anymore. But if a person combines all of this with asceticism practices, then it's 100% certain that your health will improve, even at a very advanced age. If a person, for example, stays in water and does static exercises, then these two processes will definitely help them to circulate water well in their body. What happens during this practice when a person stays in water? They passively fill their body with the energy of water, and when a person does static exercises, they expend water energy, and along with the expenditure, it forces water to enter the body. So that means that circulation is happening. You're not only pumping the energy, but you're also expending it. If a water pipe is clogged, to cleanse it, you don't just fill it, but you also let water flow out of it, so that it flows in and out. Then there will be circulation and cleansing. The more water enters and exits through the pipe, the less clogging remains there. It's the same with our body. You do passive water exposure and do static exercises, and in this case, your body cleansing is much more effective. Specifically, cleansing and increasing the entry of water energy into the body. That's it. These are two processes that complement each other. So if you don't do cleansing, a small amount of water enters, and if you do cleansing, a big amount of water enters and a lot exits. This means energetic blockages are being removed. The more intensely the water enters the body, the more the blockages are cleansed. For example, if you sit in an ice bath, this enables the strongest water entry. And you do, let's say, a stationary position of the body, the standing pose, which enables the strongest cleansing, the strongest exit of the water energy. Well, you can even stand on your head. What's good about an inversion table? Although passive, it creates a very strong exit of water energy, and both entry and exit lead to cleansing and increasing the body's ability to pump this water. Let's say a bucket is half filled with sand. Clean water is poured in, but the amount of water is small. But if you wash it by pouring water in and out, then the bucket is cleared of sand, and you can then pour much more water into it. So, I repeat once again, when a person does passive cleansing and also accompanies it with asceticism practice, they not only expend the energy but also increase its entry into the body. Let's say a person runs, they expend energy of prana and simultaneously increase its entry. Accordingly, if a person runs in a gym, the energy of prana will be limited because they're not running in fresh air. If a person always runs in a gym, what result will it give? Their energy of prana will be depleted, although their absorption capacity will be very strong. So if they run in the gym and then walk in fresh air, they will absorb as much as needed. But if they don't spend time in fresh air at all, then prolonged continuous movement leads to exhaustion. If a person, for example, runs in fresh air, then it's a completely different matter. This means that the entry and exit of energy immediately starts to function properly, and the person cleanses their body. So cleansing of the blockages in the energy layers is very simple. The most difficult thing for everybody is to start this process. Therefore, if someone starts, you shouldn't rush them to do some extreme things right away. So at the beginning, the methodology is very simple. Stay in 28-degree water, gradually increasing time. Let's say we start with 14 minutes. It's always better to cleanse one energy layer at a time. The first time you do it for 14 minutes. You can even extend it for 28 minutes the next day to cleanse 2 energy layers. Then after a day, do cleansing of 3 energy layers in the water, for example. Then after 3 days, cleanse 4 energy layers and then 5 energy layers. So if it's 28-degree water, you can reach 70 minutes in 5 sessions. There's nothing terrible about it if the person doesn't shiver in the water. If they're shivering, you can start doing 14 minutes cleansing every day for a week, for example. Then 28 minutes every other day, and so on, gradually increasing the interval. And a person can do cleansing in 28-degree water for 70 minutes, maximum twice a week. This is their maximum ability. But if a person is weakened, once a week is enough. Then gradually increase the intensity. When a person has already done cleansing at 28-degree water at least twice for 70 minutes, they must start doing static exercises. It's mandatory, because otherwise the water starts to create chaos in the body. It overexcites the body, and it doesn't get absorbed, doesn't penetrate deeply. It just moves and creates a risk of various colds, hypothermia, and so on. When a person starts doing static exercises, the first thing they should do is check which static exercise is easiest for them to do. You can try sitting in the butterfly pose for 13 minutes, sitting in the half lotus pose for 13 minutes. These are the 2 simplest static exercises. Or sit in the simplified twisted pose for 13 minutes. It's a simplified version. You can try the standing pose for 13 minutes or the kneeling pose. One of these exercises will suit you, most likely the butterfly pose, or let's say half lotus pose, but not necessarily. Because for some people it's easier to stand, for example, than to sit in the butterfly pose. It's unknown which of these exercises will be easier for you, but the rule is we always start cleansing with the easiest exercise, not the hardest one. And we start doing this gradually. First, do the standing pose or sit in the butterfly pose for 13 minutes. Then the next day for 26 minutes. Then the next day for 39 minutes. At some moment you feel that you can't sit anymore in the butterfly pose. After some time you can't sit anymore. Why can't you? Because there's a concept of general static tension, and it usually builds up towards the last energy layers. And this general static tension is removed by water. You need to spend more time in water, maybe 2 months, to make it easier for you to do static exercises. General static tension can also be removed by pumping the energy. When you do static exercises, there are only 2 options. The first option, tension gradually builds up in your body when you're sitting. When the energetic blockage is removed, it suddenly disappears and you can sit normally again. This means you can sit as long as you want, up to the 5th energy layer. And if it only keeps building up, then energetic blockages are not the issue here. This means that your body doesn't have the resources to circulate the energy of water. You simply can't do it. You get tired from this process. Or the static exercise itself is too difficult for you. Therefore, if a person sits for about 30 minutes and can't sit any longer, then they can always try to rest. For example, if a person were sitting in the butterfly pose, they can sit cross-legged for 20 seconds and then go back to the butterfly pose. This approach reduces the intensity of the cleansing but does not halt it completely. For instance, when you sit cross-legged for 40 seconds, resting from the butterfly pose, the cleansing process tends to regress rapidly, requiring you to remain in the stationary position of the body longer to maintain the cleansing effect. Constantly shifting between cleansing and non-cleansing states is uncomfortable for the body, creating a state of imbalance. Therefore, you shouldn't rest for more than 20 seconds. If after 20 seconds you sit in the butterfly pose again and feel that you still can't do it, then you should end the exercise and check the time. If you have already stayed in the pose for 35 minutes, then refrain from extending it beyond 35 minutes during a couple of weeks. Aim to maintain this duration for 2 to 3 weeks before gradually increasing it, adding 5 minutes at a time, very slowly. You should never shift between body positions. So choose a body position that's easy for you to do, work on it to be able to maintain it for 65 minutes, bring it to a state where it will be easy for you to stay in it for 65 minutes, then take the next body position and work on it. Because static tension is still different in various parts of the body. For example, if a person sits in the butterfly pose, they work on the lower part of the body. If they sit in the diamond pose, they work on the middle part of the body. If a person stands, they mainly work on the upper part of the body to remove static tension. Therefore, depending on where it accumulates in your body, it can accumulate anywhere. It may be more beneficial for you to do one particular static exercise. But the rule here is the rule of negation. That means that if you can't maintain a position and you don't feel good when you do this static exercise, it means that this is the most beneficial static exercise for you. But you shouldn't do it right now. You need to do the one that's the easiest for you. For example, if it's very difficult for you to sit in the butterfly pose, this means you have static tension accumulated in the lower part of your body, so you should do the standing pose instead. If the standing pose is easier, then start with it. Once you learn to stand for 65 minutes, then sit in the butterfly pose afterwards. Don't try to do the exercise that's harder for you right away. So if you're doing a static exercise and something starts hurting inside, it means you shouldn't do it either, because you've already accumulated the critical level of tension, and in general you need to start doing static exercises very carefully. If a person does the standing pose and faints, it means they shouldn't do it. This exercise is completely unsuitable for them. It's best to do an exercise which doesn't overstrain at all. When a person does static exercises, the overall cleansing of the tension in the body goes through 4 stages. The first stage, the whole body swells. The second stage, heat appears in the body. The third stage, numbness or tingling appears, as if you can't feel your body. The fourth stage, one feels lightness. Lightness means that the energy in the body is already moving. All these stages indicate that your body can't circulate the energy of water properly. That means it moves poorly in your body. If you practice the stationary position of the body, the water energy starts to move faster, but the body isn't ready for this. And first there's swelling, then heat in the body arises, then tingling and numbness appear, and finally comes lightness. I can clearly trace that when I started doing the butterfly pose, after 40 minutes I couldn't do it at all because I was overstrained, and then I started doing it for up to 40 minutes, then gradually increased the time. To reach 65 minutes, I had to sit cross-legged several times and try again. Then I started working on the diamond pose in the same way. I couldn't sit in the diamond pose at all. I would put a small cushion underneath to keep a distance between my buttocks and calves, and in about a year I learned to sit in the diamond pose without interrupting the body position. So now I sit in the diamond pose for 65 minutes without interruption. But before, I couldn't. I had to interrupt it and then continue again. If this interruption is short, for 20 seconds, it doesn't stop the cleansing but just weakens it. That means you're cleansing 5 energy layers, but not as deeply as you'd like. Any change in body position immediately interrupts the cleansing. But this interruption is not complete. It just increases the cleansing time and is generally not very good. For example, I'm sitting in the diamond pose, and after 40 minutes I can't sit anymore, so I switch to the butterfly pose, and my overall cleansing still continues, but it transitions to a different energy level. Let's say I sat in the diamond pose and cleansed 3 energy layers. Then I sat in the butterfly pose and the cleansing went back to 2 previous energy layers and started cleansing from these 2 energy layers. That's approximately how it works. So if I change positions, I need to sit not for 60 minutes but for 80 minutes to fully cleanse all energy layers. And this cleansing, in general, is not as effective because sometimes the upper part of the body is being cleansed, sometimes the lower part. This is all inefficient for health, so it's better not to change the body position. The same goes for people who practice yoga. They do one exercise after another. If they do yoga for 2 hours, then most likely during these 2 hours a complete cleansing of all 5 energy layers occurs, but it's ineffective because everything is cleansed a little bit. The cleansing happens here and there, but overall, all 5 energy layers are cleansed, but not deeply. Therefore, deep cleansing always means doing one exercise for a long time and continuously. The exercises we know, the butterfly pose, the kneeling pose, half lotus pose, all these exercises cleanse each energy layer for 13 minutes, but this doesn't mean that cleansing always takes 13 minutes. For example, if I'm doing a handstand, one energy layer is cleansed in about 45-50 seconds. Imagine the speed. And if you're doing a headstand, I haven't timed it exactly, but it's approximately 1 minute 20 seconds or 1.5 minutes per energy layer. When you're hanging upside down, one energy layer is cleansed in 3.5 minutes. When your legs are stretched forward and you're bending, this exercise is very good for those who have a hernia in the spine. So it's good to do this exercise, but it already gives a very fast cleansing speed. Usually one energy layer is cleansed in 13 minutes, but in this position it takes 8 minutes. This means in 24 minutes you'll cleanse 3 energy layers, which is a fairly fast cleansing speed if you're bending forward. The same goes for when you're on your knees and bend backward. This body position also cleanses 1 energy layer in about 8 minutes. When you do a shoulder stand, it's about 8 minutes per energy layer. So this is already accelerated cleansing, and I don't recommend these body positions for beginners at all, because they cleanse too quickly and are too difficult. You need to be a trained person to do them. I think the complete lotus pose also cleanses faster than just the basic exercises that we do. I haven't studied the lotus pose. I need to check the cleansing speed. It's probably a bit faster than 13 minutes, although it might be 13 minutes. The faster the cleansing speed, the more intensely the energy layers are cleansed. So why is the inversion table good? It provides a very fast cleansing speed, and it's passive at the same time. What does passive cleansing mean? It means that you don't have to strain yourself as much, and the energy layers might not be cleansed as deeply as when you perform asceticism practice. However, the speed of water energy movement is high, therefore energetic blockages are generally cleansed when hanging upside down. I think the same effect occurs with this pravilo practice when a person is stretched out like Jesus Christ, hanging by their arms and legs. It also cleanses static tension, but I don't know the speed of this cleansing. I would need to see photos of pravilo practitioners. And they will have to say for how long they were hanging on this pravilo, for 3.5 minutes or 5 minutes. And then I'll tell you what cleansing speed this hanging provides. These methods are very beneficial. Despite the person being in a passive position without exerting effort, energetic blockages are cleansed well, and water circulation in the body improves. As for static exercises, if you want to increase cleansing, it's better to finish between energy layers. Stand for 13 minutes or 26 or 39 minutes. This way you will be cleansing the precise number of energy layers. There are also blockages between energy layers. To recognize this, you need to think and feel. Let's say a person was doing the standing pose to cleanse 3 energy layers, but they don't feel relief. On the contrary, they only feel a strong heaviness. In this case, you need to continue standing until you feel it becomes easier, and only after that should you end the static exercise. You shouldn't finish during strong tension. You shouldn't finish when you reach an energetic blockage. There are 2 types of tension. For example, you're sitting in the butterfly pose, and you feel tension gradually building up. This is not related to an energetic blockage. It only indicates that your body is not coping well with this physical activity. You should always adhere to an important rule: never finish during the cleansing of an energetic blockage. This rule applies to any type of challenge. Let's say you're in the water, and suddenly you start shaking. Don't get out of the water at this moment. Wait for a period of relaxation. But if you're shaking constantly, then it doesn't matter when you finish the asceticism practice. While doing static exercises, you can listen to lectures or pray, but it's better to pray because prayer greatly helps to process the energy of knowledge. When a person is practicing a stationary position of the body, their energy of knowledge is cleansed. Also, ojas, the energy of happiness, is cleansed. During prolonged continuous movement, mental activity is activated. During static exercises, the energy of knowledge is cleansed. For this reason, static exercises are better combined with prayer. You can also listen to lectures while doing static exercises. The concentration will be quite high. Nevertheless, my experience shows that it's more pleasant to listen to a lecture while walking rather than during static exercises. You walk, listen to the lecture, and think about life. During running, a lecture may not always help, as the physical effort is very intense. Especially if you've recently started running and you're struggling with the strain, you probably won't be able to focus on the lecture. You'll only be thinking about running, overcoming life's obstacles, and defeating your fate. During asceticism practices, you shouldn't watch anything negative. For example, war reports or horror movies. Also, you shouldn't argue with anyone. When a person is performing asceticism practices, they should think about good things. If they're not thinking about good things, it means good energy isn't entering them, but negative energy is. Therefore, if you come into contact with negativity during asceticism practice, it will enter you on an energetic level much deeper than if you weren't doing asceticism practice at that time. In other words, if you get into an ice bath and start swearing at someone, the destructive energy will affect you more strongly than if you were swearing while not in the ice bath. This also applies to being in a sauna. In this case, negativity or impurity will penetrate you more deeply. Remember, asceticism practice should not be performed in combination with negative energy. It won't lead to anything good. Do it only with a smile, positive information, and joyful emotions. This is my advice for you. Let's talk about static exercises. Can they harm a person? It's unlikely. Static exercises and water-related asceticism practices are not particularly dangerous, but if a person is doing the standing pose near a wall, then loses consciousness and falls, hitting their head, of course, this could lead to death. People always fall forward. For example, they could fatally hit their head and die. Therefore, theoretically, static exercises can harm a person due to carelessness. Let's say a person is sitting in a static pose and suddenly feels the acute pain in their joint. Acute pain is a sign that you need to immediately cease the asceticism practice. If the pain is dull, then it's acceptable. But it's worth listening to your body, paying attention to the intensity and duration of the pain, because if a person endures pain for a long time, they may feel unwell. If you don't feel any pain and there's no strong tension during the asceticism practice, then it won't harm you. If you feel severe tension, there may be consequences. Nevertheless, static exercises and water asceticism practices are the most harmless and beneficial methods of cleansing the body. Static exercises should be done 4 times a week because static tension accumulates in the body faster than others. It is the cause of most health problems. It also contributes to the occurrence of inflammatory processes. For example, water energy in the body is expended the fastest, and it is also replenished faster than others. Static exercises need to be done 4 times a week, and at least once a week you should stay in water. People don't have the experience or habit of staying in water. They think it's not necessary at all. Why stay in water? We're not fish after all. But in ancient culture, people tried to stay in water every day. For example, in India, people didn't just dip in the water. They stood in the water for a long time with their eyes closed, facing the sun. And that's how they healed themselves. It's important to understand that a person should be filled with the energy of water and fresh air. This is a necessity of our life. So we've talked about the butterfly pose. Now let's move on to dynamic exercises. Maybe my assistant can tell us more about dynamic exercises? All right, so what else can we say about static exercises? You can do them every day. If a person is well trained, they can do active and passive static exercises simultaneously. For example, you can sit in the butterfly pose, then hang upside down on an inversion table after some time. It's better to do it after some time. You can do it after a while, and this will cleanse the body even more. But if you do static exercises every day and hang upside down on an inversion table, then you're likely to experience overload. Therefore, everything should always be done in moderation. The same applies to cleansing 5 energy layers in ice-cold water, which can be practiced twice a week. That's the maximum, but it should always be combined with a sauna. It's not necessary. A trained person can simply warm up in hot water afterwards, and that's it. But if, for example, you've stayed in an ice bath and then warmed up in water, cleansing 2 energy layers, you'll have a lot of water energy in your body. And if you don't do static exercises at the same time, it becomes very dangerous for your health. Especially if people sit in an ice bath and then don't warm up and also don't do static exercises, it's very dangerous for health. Some people are so hot-blooded, they sit in an ice bath and then they don't feel cold at all. But if they don't do static exercises and don't expend the energy of water, it's very dangerous for health. Even if a person doesn't feel it, it doesn't matter. They may develop some serious inflammatory processes in the body later, and they will suffer. Let's say we started staying in 28-degree water for 70 minutes and did it for 2 weeks. In addition to water practice, we did static exercises for 2 weeks. Now it's time to start dynamic exercises. How do you start with dynamic exercises? If you never practice prolonged movement, you start walking 48 minutes every day. No need to rush anywhere. You'll always have time. Walk for 48 minutes every day for a week, for example. You feel it's not difficult for you? Good, then start walking for 96 minutes every other day to cleanse 2 energy layers. You feel it's not difficult? Good. Let's say you've walked for a week, then start walking once every 3 days to cleanse 3 energy layers. You find it difficult? Okay. Then continue walking to cleanse 3 energy layers and do it for a month, 2 or 3. You feel it's become easier? Add 1 more energy layer. Now you walk cleansing 4 energy layers once every 4 or 5 days. This is already a significant physical activity. You feel it's really tough? Then walk like this for 2-3 months. Don't rush. Then you feel it's become easier. You walk easily, so increase walking up to 5 energy layers. There's no need to walk for more than 5 energy layers. 5 energy layers are cleansed in about 4 hours on average. But it's unknown how a person walks. Maybe they walk very slowly, and then they'll need to walk much longer than 4 hours. It could be 4.5 or 5 hours. That's why we created a calculation module. You need to check with it at what speed you do your practices and what the result will be. If you crawl like a turtle, then maybe you'll need to walk for 10 hours to cleanse 5 energy layers, who knows. When you walk for a long time, let's say, to cleanse 3 energy layers, expect your joints to heal. Your knees will ache. Expect them to start healing, they definitely will. The body prepares first. It watches whether you consistently provide it with energy or not. The body doesn't trust the person. It first observes if you're consistently giving energy and thinks, let's take a risk, let's start healing. And why take a risk? Because as soon as your knee starts aching, you might say, oh, my knee started aching, I won't walk anymore. You go to a doctor and the doctor says, of course you shouldn't walk, you need to sit and that's all. Why is the doctor saying that? Because the doctor doesn't know how it works. If your knee starts aching, continue walking, because the healing process is going on. Why is it aching? It's saying, I don't have enough energy for healing. That's why it aches. It needs more energy, but you can't give more because you've already walked enough and that's it. When you walk, it doesn't ache anymore. It's healing joyfully. Then you stopped and it's aching. The healing is ended, but it still needs more. It wasn't enough. Let's say you decided to defecate. You sit down to do it. Let's say you're in the army. In the army's training unit, there's a specific time given for this act. So you're sitting there in the restroom and they tell you, fall in. They all go to the restroom in formation. Then from the restroom, fall in, and you're still in the restroom. This is a real case from my life. And you think, I didn't have time to finish. What should I do? But you have to fall in, otherwise they'll punish you. You'll end up washing dishes all day as punishment. You put on your pants, but you haven't finished your business yet. The knee feels approximately the same when it hasn't finished healing and it's time to stop moving. It's dissatisfied. It aches. And as you didn't finish your business in the restroom, you walk around complaining all day. It's roughly this kind of system. But there's nothing you can do here. You can't walk and walk all day long for it to heal. You'll experience overload. So it just aches. You need to get used to it. If it aches, it means it's healing. Gradually, this aching becomes weaker. But this doesn't mean you should increase physical activity. Wait until the joints have healed more or less, and then increase training further. With the body, you always need to do everything gradually. I know one quite strong guy who started running in the mountains to cleanse 5 energy layers right away. And then his knee started aching. He went to the hospital. They told him, you have some kind of cyst in your knee. You need surgery. He stopped running. The cyst didn't disappear, but he didn't want surgery either. Then he heard somewhere in a lecture that this is a process of healing. He started running again, and long story short, the cyst healed on its own. This is an overstrain. It would have been best if he had just walked. If he had walked to cleanse 5 energy layers, let's say, for half a year, then he would feel how easy it becomes to walk, and nothing aches. If something is aching, continue walking. Let's say you've been walking for half a year, nothing aches. Start interval running. First you run, when you get tired, walk, then run again. On the website torsunov.ru, in the materials section, there's a calculation of asceticism practice time, and there you can simply calculate and see how much you need to run and walk approximately to cover 5 energy layers. First alternate running and walking, walk, run, walk, run, then increase running time and decrease the number of stops. Usually people start walking where there's an energetic blockage, and where there's no blockage, it's easy to run. Gradually you can progress to running. How should you run? It should be easy for you to breathe. This is the main rule. If it's easy for you to breathe and you don't have acute pain in any part of your body, you can run. If you experience dull pain, push through it. But if the pain intensifies, slow down. If it persists, switch to walking. This is generally the approach. If a person is running and they're out of breath, it means they're running too fast. It's advisable to use a heart rate monitor when you start running. This helps you track your pulse, as it's not always obvious what's happening with your heart. For example, if your heart rate exceeds 160 beats per minute while running, it's too high. Up to 160 is considered normal, but this can vary between individuals. Some people have a normal heart rate of around 100 beats per minute due to a weak heart. In such cases, a heart rate of 160 while running might be acceptable, but it's better to stick to walking if your heart is weak. Our understanding of this is still developing. But I personally set my limit at 160 beats per minute. I find that going beyond this is not advisable. When I first started running, my heart rate would reach 160, 170 beats per minute. Now my maximum heart rate at the end of a run is 155. This is the upper limit. Currently, my average heart rate during a fast run is around 143, 145 beats per minute. For a pace of 6 minutes 30 seconds per kilometer, it's about 137, 138 beats per minute. In optimal conditions, such as good climate and location, my average heart rate might even drop to 132 beats per minute. These are my limits, but I know other people often have higher heart rates. I rarely encounter lower rates because those are athletes. They might have an average pulse of 120 during a run. This means their heart is highly trained. My heart is generally well trained because in my childhood, when it was developing and growing, I practiced Sambo. I went through various cross-country runs and training. Therefore, my heart is generally well trained, and that's why my body is athletic, because I trained in childhood, and so it grew to be strong like this. Continuous movement like walking and running may not suit everyone. These are preferred methods of prolonged movement. An elliptical machine can be an alternative. One can place their arms and legs in a good position. Who is it useful for? It's especially useful for individuals with severely damaged joints or those who are paralyzed who can't walk. But they can move their arms on an elliptical machine. For someone with one paralyzed leg, using both arms and the functioning leg on an elliptical machine can provide a way to move. If you drag your leg, then you need to use an elliptical machine. Or a blind person, they need to buy an elliptical machine, and they'll be able to work out on this elliptical machine because both hands are holding on, both feet are secured, and that's it. I tried using the elliptical machine with my eyes closed. It's absolutely great. You move, no problems. But if blind people engage in walking, they might bump into trees or stumble on the road. That's certainly not good. Prolonged continuous movement is still necessary for every person. Therefore, the elliptical machine is a great thing. There are electronic elliptical machines, they're expensive, and there are just mechanical ones, cheap. You can buy an elliptical machine for disabled people. There are also people with cerebral palsy. They also need an elliptical machine. For those who also find it difficult to walk, working out on an elliptical machine is good for them. This also helps. How to calculate any movement? Let's say you can cleanse the energy layers with any movement. I do 108 bends at my own pace. One energy layer of my dynamic tension is cleansed and 216 bends cleanse 2 energy layers, but I don't do more bends than that. And if you want to know how to cleanse the energy layers with any movement, for this you need to buy a watch that measures your pulse. It measures pulse, distance, and time. All watches measure time. Let's say you walk for 48 minutes cleansing one energy layer. It shows you, for example, that you've walked 4 kilometers in 48 minutes. Your average pulse is, let's say, 110, and you walked for 48 minutes. You look at the table and it shows you've cleansed one energy layer. Great. Now you can exercise on the elliptical machine. You exercise for 48 minutes on the elliptical machine and you monitor your pulse and you see that your average pulse on the elliptical machine is 110. This means that in 48 minutes on the elliptical machine you've cleansed one energy layer. So you need to replace distance with pulse rate. On the elliptical machine, you don't know how far you've gone, or when you're doing bends, you don't know how far you've gone during the bends. Or let's say you're doing squats, you don't know how much dynamic tension is being cleansed. And everything is determined by pulse rate then. You do exercises according to pulse rate. Let's say if during average walking, one energy layer was cleansed in 48 minutes at a pulse rate of 110, then whatever dynamic movement you do at an average pulse of 110, it means there will be a cleansing process. The same number of energy layers will be cleansed in the same amount of time. That's the method. You need to replace distance with pulse rate, and that's it. And this way, any person can do some other kind of energy layer cleansing. Some people think that all cleansings are the same. A person pedals an exercise bike, for instance. This cleansing is much weaker than cleansing during walking. The most intense cleansing is running. Because the whole body is moving, you get a very strong cleansing. Of course, theoretically, we can assume that there might be some cleansing more powerful than running. But will you be able to do it to cleanse all 5 energy layers? Let's say you're doing some complex exercises standing on your hands. You're doing a handstand, bending and straightening your legs. This might be much more difficult than running, but will you be able to do it to cleanse 5 energy layers? That's the question. And that's why running is a natural way of cleansing, because it can easily be done to cleanse all 5 energy layers. And it's basically accessible to anyone if you gradually work up to it. An exercise bike is also fine if you ride it continuously. People ask, can I cleanse energy layers on a bicycle? You can, but mainly the bicycle will be getting cleansing. When you're riding a bicycle, you pedal once and then do nothing. What kind of cleansing will happen? No cleansing at all. Cleansing requires continuous pedaling. Therefore, if you're on a stationary bike, that's a different story. You continuously pedal. Why is a stationary bike useful? If your arms or half of your body are paralyzed, but your legs can still move, but nothing else moves, and you can't even stand up, a stationary bike can be useful. You can't even get out of bed, but your legs can move. By using a stationary bike, you can still exercise and do cleansing up to 5 energy layers. This helps in the recovery of your nervous system. Many paralyzed individuals don't recover because they aren't providing enough energy to their nervous system. If a paralyzed person receives enough energy for 5 layers of the human energy field, their nervous system will recover. If a person consistently pedals on a stationary bike to provide energy to all 5 layers every 5 days, in a year they are no longer disabled. They will be able to stand up because all their nerves will have regrown. I had an acquaintance who was paralyzed except for one hand. He could only move one hand. He said, listen, please help me stand up. I told him, are you willing to pay the price? He answered, I am. I replied, take a hand exerciser and move your hand until all 5 energy layers have been cleansed. I told him how much he needed to train, and he started training. He reached the 2nd energy layer and then said, this is so difficult, can I just lie here? Well, go ahead and just lie. He was lying there for a year, then passed away. In other words, if you want to live, live. He needed to reach all 5 energy layers with the hand exerciser, and gradually everything would have recovered. First, this arm would have recovered, then he could have moved his arm, cleansing 5 energy layers, lifting something up. Then his shoulder would have recovered, then the other arm. That's how a person gradually recovers. I had a friend who was completely paralyzed, and he healed his broken spine through movement, and he recovered completely. So it's a matter of desire. Want to live? Live. Don't want to live? Die. Therefore, each person chooses for themselves whether to live or pass away. Especially those who are listening online, because now you know that there's a possibility to heal whatever you want. For this, you just need to carefully start asceticism practices, then perform them, and then get the result. And prolonged continuous movement is just such a thing. Let's say a person performs a prolonged continuous movement and something starts to ache. Typically, this is when the most tough challenge comes. Even for me, do you think I know everything, see everything? Do you think my heart didn't sink when my lower back was severely aching for 3 years? Imagine for 3 years after running, it constantly ached. There was such a heaviness in the lower back from running. And people were telling, you're already at an old age, you shouldn't exercise, you need to wear special belts on your back. I still wear knee supports. I'll tell you a little about why this is done. The only thing that helped me, after which everything healed easily. But even before that, it was getting better. There's now such a device called a vibration massager. It has a small head, and if you also massage with it, the recovery speed of the organ being treated happens faster, because the metabolism goes faster. And you can massage the knees that are aching with this vibration massager. I started to massage my lower back. I did it for about a month, and it completely stopped aching. Now I even carry this massager with me in my hand luggage everywhere I go so that I can massage my lower back or knees during flight, for example, if they get overstrained. It's a good thing. There's a brand Yamaguchi. It's small. They come in different sizes. There's the smallest one, don't buy it, but the medium size is good. I can even show you now how it looks. It's this thing. You can't see how it vibrates, but it vibrates when you press it. This little thing, this is exactly what it looks like. It's very convenient on the road, and generally it's good. This round attachment is the best. There are different attachments. You can massage your back, neck, arms, whatever you want. It's really convenient, a good thing. For those who fly, travel, or are on the road, especially older people, it's a very good thing. So during prolonged, continuous movement, the most difficult part is when something starts to ache. This is a test because it keeps aching and you don't understand how to live with it. Michael, did your knees or spine ache when you started running, when you began to run actively?
My knees were aching a little, but otherwise everything was fine.
Who else here runs? Olivia, did anything ache or not?
Well, not constantly. Sometimes a knee could ache a little bit. But in general, no.
You know, some people have flat feet. I seem to have flat feet. And when a person with flat feet runs, they have 2 bones below the knee. They go like this, 2 bones. And these bones spread apart. And when they spread apart, the knee joint becomes very susceptible to pain. It becomes difficult for it. Therefore, there are knee supports, such supporting bandages. You just fasten them around below the knee, not even tightening them strongly, just fasten them and that's it. And these muscles are supported, the bones don't spread apart, and the muscles gradually strengthen, and then you can even run without them. And sometimes a person runs and their hips move a lot. For women, this is natural, but if a man's hips move a lot, it's dangerous because it leads to the lower back becoming loose and everything starts to ache there too. Then there's also a belt for the back to keep the hips from moving. This usually happens when the muscles are weak. You start running and everything is wobbling. That's why belts are sometimes needed. Sometimes a person is very overweight. When they run, their belly wobbles a lot. And during this time, when it's wobbling, something unpleasant can also happen there. Therefore, you can run and provide support for the belly, such a bandage. You run with your belly secured and everything is fine. But all this is required for the initial period. Later, when a person runs, everything gets trained overall and everything gets fit. It's interesting to know that weight loss begins after the third energy layer. There are two types of fat. There's subcutaneous fat. It starts to dissolve when you run cleansing 3 energy layers. But there are rules here. Running up to the third energy layer alone doesn't dissolve subcutaneous fat. You need to do a 36-hour fasting or stay in a sauna to cleanse 3 energy layers. In addition to running, you have to practice 36 hours of fasting or stay in a sauna to cleanse 3 energy layers. Then you start to dissolve subcutaneous fat. And there's also mesenteric fat at the 4th energy layer. This is a very deep fat. Subcutaneous fat dissolves only after running to cleanse 4 energy layers. It's crucial to understand that walking alone won't lead to fat dissolution or weight loss. Walking will only provide subtle energy body cleansing without affecting weight. Because for a person to lose weight, they need accelerated movement of prana. Prana must move faster in the body for a person to lose weight, so only when a person runs can they lose weight. It's also very important to know that if one has a benign tumor like a fibroid or cysts, one won't be able to dissolve them if they don't run. But there's a clever method, I'll tell you about it. This clever method is as follows. If you have a fibroid in the 3rd energy layer, you can walk to cleanse 2 energy layers and then run to cleanse the 3rd layer. If you, let's say, walked cleansing 2 energy layers, then ran cleansing the 3rd layer, then walked again, it will dissolve, because running cleansed the 3rd energy layer. If you need to dissolve something on the 4th energy layer, then walk to cleanse 3 energy layers, and then run to cleanse 1 energy layer. Anyone can run for 20 minutes. In general, if you want to, it's not difficult to run to cleanse 1 energy layer. But naturally, if you want to do it differently, you'll have to run up to the 4th energy layer. That's not 20 minutes, it's already 1 hour 40 minutes, so it's a completely different matter. Fasting works the same way. Let's say a person can't practice water fasting and they have breast mastopathy. That's the 4th energy layer. A person can't do fasting for 2 days to cleanse 4 energy layers. They don't have enough strength. What can you do? You can fast on greens for the first day. This is called passive fasting, but cleansing still takes place. For example, blend lettuce leaves in a blender and drink it. Cleansing will continue all day long. Then the next day, you do water fasting, and that's it. This way you do a 2-day fasting, but on the first day fasting is passive, and on the second day it is active. You can, for example, practice water fasting for the first day, and do fasting with no water for the second day. This fasting without water is an even more intense fasting. The more intense the fasting, the stronger the dissolution process. When a person practices fasting, the energy of the sun is absorbed into the body. Let's talk about fasting later. Now we're still studying dynamic exercises with you. What else do we need to know about dynamic exercises? You need to know that you can go to the toilet during dynamic exercises. Many people constantly ask this question. Can I go to the bathroom? Yes, you can. Let's say you're running, and you really need to go to the bathroom. And you can go to the bathroom once. Just run a little longer, just for a couple of minutes, and that's it. When a person stops once for 40, 50 seconds, it's not a big deal. To tie a shoelace or to go to the bathroom. In general, of course, it's not very good. The cleansing process is going on, then it regresses. We'll make a calculation when we have an advanced application. We'll calculate all this and find out how quickly the cleansing regresses when stopping. So a person was running, then stopped, and the cleansing regressed, and then they started running again and the cleansing was renewed. And when it is renewed, it progresses faster than usual because some parts have already been cleansed. And when it reaches the point where the cleansing stopped, it goes at the same speed as before. Therefore, all this can be experimentally calculated. And as soon as we have watches that determine how the cleansing is going, you will all be able to use these watches, which will be able to determine the cleansing by pulse or by distance. Therefore, with the watches, it doesn't matter where you practice cleansing, whether in the gym or anywhere else, your cleansing will always be shown. And even if you take breaks between exercises, let's say you're working out in the gym, you'll still know how many energy layers you've cleansed during your workout. We will have such an application either as a watch-shaped device or on mobile phones. You can carry it with you and use it. When doing dynamic exercises, you can breathe through your mouth and nose. It's just a theory that it's only good to breathe through your nose. Breathe with whatever you can. If you can breathe with your ears, breathe with your ears. But I haven't met anyone who breathes through their ears. Mostly everyone breathes through their mouth or nose. Therefore, dogs, for example, only breathe through their mouth. They smell with their nose. Once an acquaintance of mine taped a dog's mouth shut with duct tape, maybe for the night so it wouldn't bark because it was annoying to him, and the dog almost died afterwards, because dogs don't breathe through their nose. They have very narrow nasal passages. They only breathe through their mouth, as it turns out. We don't know about this. Therefore, you can't tape a dog's mouth shut. It only breathes through its mouth. Humans can breathe through their nose, but that doesn't mean you can only breathe through your nose while running. You can breathe through your mouth too. Some people invent different types of breathing during running. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, or something like that. In theory, if a person likes it, they can do it. I don't bother with that. I breathe with whatever I can and however I can. You just need to understand that you should feel at ease while running and not force yourself. Breathe easily, run easily. It's best to run where there are no changes in elevation. If there are small ones, it's not a big deal, especially if the person is trained. You need to understand that changes in elevation don't enhance cleansing. Easy running cleanses, while changes in elevation increase the load. It's a stimulating practice, meaning changes in elevation increase your body's ability to handle overstrain, and with age, the ability to handle overstrain decreases for everybody. Therefore, it's best to run on flat surfaces. And also there's an opinion that it's better to run on earth than on asphalt. I would agree with this if there wasn't soft footwear. If you have soft, very flexible footwear that doesn't create vibrations during running, then in this case it's better to run on asphalt than on earth. Because on earth there are various bumps and you get tired, you can't just calm down, relax. There are trained people for whom running on earth is good. One of my friends, for example, runs on the ground. I'm sure it's fine for him. I also want to say that while running, run as you can. For example, I've seen how people are taught to run. Lift your legs higher, stand on your toes, and so on. If you start using these complicated instructions during body cleansing, you'll just get tired, and it will be very difficult for you to run. Run as you can. If you run like an ostrich, that's good, of course, lifting your legs high. It's beautiful and good. But if you run, let's say, like a turtle or like some kind of goose waddling, then run as you can. Just run as you can. Like a cow or like a horse, of course. Like a horse is very beautiful. Like a cow is not very beautiful, but run as you can. And the practice is this. Run relaxed, run as you can. And after a year, you'll be running as you should. All muscles will strengthen, recover. Your toes, feet, muscles will get trained. And gradually a person's running stabilizes. This happens by itself. And their muscles work better and better during running, and they run normally. Still, an elderly person will not run like a young person because the body is not as flexible anymore. I've observed that as I age, it takes me longer to warm up. Previously, I would need to run to cleanse half an energy layer to warm up, but now it takes a full energy layer, which translates to about 20 minutes. That means that the initial 20 minutes are more challenging for me compared to the subsequent period. With advancing age, the body becomes more rigid. Consequently, starting any asceticism practices can be tough, but it becomes easier over time if you're well trained. For those who are untrained, both the start and progression will be difficult. I've more or less told you everything about running and walking. Is it possible to only walk throughout your life? It's possible if you're a woman, for example. It's generally difficult for women to run. The body's very relaxed, and the female body doesn't like intense physical activity. But I know girls who run with me when I arrive in their city. They run without any problems. They run at my speed. I've even seen girls who run faster than me. No problem. And quite mature women run faster. It depends on their training, their desire. But many women or girls don't want to or can't run. They might be overweight, for instance, or be in advanced age, or it's just difficult. You can walk for 4 hours. My dear ladies, if you think that your female body doesn't need cleansing of the energetic blockages, you're mistaken. All types of bodies need cleansing of the energetic blockages, both male and female. And even if a person is a transvestite, whether their body is male or female is unclear, they'll still need to cleanse their energy layers. It doesn't change anything in this regard. What's the difference between a female and a male body? What's the main difference? And the main difference is in the speed of adaptation. But the female body has its advantages and disadvantages. For example, it's hard for a woman to start running. The adaptation is slow, but once she starts, her body also slowly loses the habit of running. Let's say she started running. It will be easy for her to run for the rest of her life if she gradually gets into it. But the male body quickly loses this habit. Its adaptation is fast, and it loses the habit quickly. If a woman starts to swim in freezing water, it will be easy for her to do it for the rest of her life. But if a man stops swimming in freezing water and time passes, he needs to start over again because the body loses the habit. That's the whole difference. A man can quickly get into asceticism practices, but if he stops, the body quickly becomes out of shape. A woman slowly gets into it and maintains the form for a long time. That's the whole difference. Therefore, women can gradually start running, get used to it, and it will be fine. Well, naturally, the running speed may differ, because women are shorter in height. They won't run as fast as men, and the body is not as fast overall. It's more lazy, relaxed by nature, and therefore naturally fast running is unlikely for a woman. But in general, women can run. We've talked about running and walking. We've discussed various types of dynamic cleansing. You can just move your wrist and cleanse 5 energy layers of the human energy field. It all depends on your capabilities. Always choose the maximum of your capabilities. Running is the best option. Walking is also one of the best. Can you walk with poles? You can walk with poles. But again, you need to monitor your pulse, because I don't know what the cleansing speed is with poles. It's different for everyone. If you move with poles, you need to check the pulse. Take a walk and then check your pulse, as I explained. We've covered all of this in general. The more ill a person is, the slower they walk, and the slower they get into asceticism practice. All training should happen gradually. When a person has started to walk or run, they can start working on toxins. When a person wants to eliminate toxins, it's very much connected with their daily routine. Everything is generally connected with the daily routine, because if a person gets up late from bed, static tension accumulates, and if a person goes to bed late, dynamic tension accumulates. And here's an interesting connection. If a person has strong static tension, they can't fall asleep. When they can't fall asleep, dynamic tension accumulates. When they get up late, it becomes even more difficult to fall asleep because static tension accumulates, and so it becomes a vicious circle. And people who get up very late and go to bed very late generally can't be healed. They are doomed to develop illnesses even if they do cleansing practices. Therefore, sooner or later, you need to come to a daily routine and do everything on time. It's also very important to know that toxins accumulate from evening eating. Evening eating is an extremely important thing. If a person looks at the refrigerator and their eyes go wild, then it's better for them not to eat in the evening at all. Just drink water and get used to not eating in the evenings, otherwise they will definitely accumulate excess weight. All people on earth who have excess weight have gained this excess weight due to evening eating. If a person doesn't eat in the evening, they won't gain weight anyway, whether they are prone to weight gain or not. It's evening eating that causes excess weight. Because the sun sets, food can't be deeply assimilated, there's no full digestion cycle, and a partial digestion cycle is what causes excess weight. This is called assimilated toxins. There are unassimilated toxins. They go into the blood, affect the vessels, causing colds, oncology, and there are assimilated toxins. The body stores these toxins as reserves to somehow process them later, but it's incorrect to think that excess weight is some kind of useful food remaining in the stomach. To some extent it might be useful because if a person has excess weight, they will definitely die of starvation later than someone who doesn't have excess weight. And since all women have a little fat in their bodies, they are naturally more adapted to hunger. They die more slowly from hunger than men. Of course, fat won't hurt, but it's a question of quantity. Because the more fat, the less energetically functional the body is. Energy moves worse in the body. This fat constantly turns into toxins and so on. It's all dangerous. And therefore I distinguish 3 stages of body damage by toxins. The first stage is toxins or excess weight. The second stage is benign tumors. And the third stage is malignant tumors. And all malignant or benign tumors arise only from toxins and negative tone. Do you understand the difference between toxins and negative tone? Negative tone is toxins inside the subtle energy body, and toxins are toxins inside the physical body. Toxins have a coarse material nature, and the negative tone is of a subtle material nature. How is negative tone perceived? In the form of negative emotions, thoughts, bad mood, and disappointment in life. Negative emotions are located on the 2nd energy layer, bad thoughts are on the 3rd energy layer, bad mood is on the 4th energy layer, and disappointment in life is on the 5th energy layer. Negative tone is treated in 3 main ways. The first method is fasting. There are 3 types of fasting. The dry fasting is the most powerful. The sun's energy is absorbed most intensely. But I recommend dry fasting only for trained people who have no toxins in their body, because during a dry fasting, toxins are digested but not eliminated from the body, and this of course creates tension in the body. And during water fasting, toxins are digested and eliminated from the body. And the third type of fasting is fasting on greens. Only greens among all foods provide cleansing. All other products, even fruits, do not provide cleansing. Only greens provide cleansing because they contain a lot of energy of the sun. Because of the abundance of sun's energy, greens help cleanse the body with this solar energy. It's a food that's difficult to digest, which enables cleansing. When we do cleansing with greens, we either eat them raw or mix them with water and blend. If we make stewed greens, the cleansing effect ends. It becomes food, not a product for cleansing the body. In 12 hours of fasting, look how interesting. Exactly 12 hours, one energy layer is cleansed. Exactly 12 hours, that's how nature designed it. For 2 energy layers, it takes 24 hours. For 3 energy layers, 36, 4 energy layers, 48, and 5 energy layers, exactly 60 hours. Intermittent fasting for 12 or 16 hours can be done daily. I don't eat until lunch every day. It's very convenient and great. You can do a lot in the morning, as the body is very strong. When the sun rises, body cleansing occurs. When you're older, you need to cleanse your body every day. I'm lucky that my blockage of toxins is at the beginning of the 2nd energy layer. I cleanse this blockage every day when I don't eat in the morning. In total, a person has 4 energetic blockages, 3 full and 1 partial. A person has 4 static energy blockages, 4 dynamic blockages, and 4 toxin blockages. With rare exceptions, it's common for all people on Earth. 3 full energetic blockages and 1 partial. Usually at the beginning of the energy layers, there's a partial blockage, then a full one starts. Or there's a partial energetic blockage at the end, and 3 full ones at the beginning. I cleanse 1 partial energetic blockage and 1 full blockage every day. I don't cleanse the other 2 blockages, but I do intermittent fasting. I don't practice fasting more because life is difficult. Constant trips make it hard to do. However, I try to cleanse all 5 energy layers in the sauna once or twice a week. In the sauna, I cleanse the toxins in my body with the sun, the 2 remaining energetic blockages that are on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th energy layers. Intermittent fasting is very beneficial. I eat a full meal at lunch, and in the evening only fruits and nothing else, fruits, dried fruits. I don't eat nuts or sweets, nothing. Only fruits and dried fruits. I don't eat anything else in the evenings. When I travel and give lectures, I eat ice cream in the evenings because my brain overheats and needs cooling. When I give an evening lecture, I have almost 5 hours of work. Everyone needs Dr. Torsunov. People still bombard me with questions after the lecture. One last question, Dr. Torsunov, just one more question. I come home, eat fruits and ice cream to cool down. Ice cream relaxes me well in the evening, but it's only beneficial for me, not for everyone else. I eat it because of the overload. Generally, one shouldn't eat after 6 p.m. Meat, fish, eggs should never be eaten, especially in the evening. Also, you shouldn't eat grains, legumes, dairy, or sweets in the evening. The only exception is hot milk with honey, and preferably with turmeric before bed. You can also add shilajit to it for relaxation. You can drink half a cup for relaxation. It's not for eating, but for relaxation. Hot milk with added shilajit, honey, and turmeric. Drink it and go to sleep if sleep is disturbed. What can you eat in the evening? You can eat fruits, but vegetables are the best. Why do I eat fruits in the evening? Because I overheat and they cool me down. Sometimes you can eat fruits in the evening, but mainly vegetables except for potatoes, tomatoes, and peppers. It's better not to eat these vegetables at night, but all other ones are fine. Vegetables, any greens, fruits, dried fruits, nuts, and non-grain cereals such as buckwheat, quinoa, amaranth, millet, and sago. All of these can be eaten at night. There won't be an overload. Try to eat less oil at night. Oil and spices are not recommended. Only add a little salt at night. The best option, of course, is always to boil everything or fry only with clarified butter. All other oils are dangerous for health in this situation. The most dangerous is cooking with sunflower oil and olive oil. There are other relatively safe oils. Rice oil, soybean oil. Oils associated with grains are normal for cooking. Grain and legume oils, corn, soybean, rice are more or less fine. Oils associated with seeds and fruits like olive, sunflower, any other oil associated with seeds are harmful when heated. To start fasting, it's best to begin with intermittent fasting. It's important to learn to absorb the sun energy without an overload. There are 2 types of intermittent fasting. One option is to have lunch and then eat only in the morning. The second option is to eat in the evening and then only at lunch. Intermittent fasting can be done 3 times a week, or it can be done every day. Daily is for trained individuals. For those who are starting to fast, it's best to do intermittent fasting 2 to 3 times a week. You should choose intermittent fasting depending on your attitude towards evening meals. If you're not bothered in the evening, you eat a little and go to sleep with no problems, it's better to do intermittent fasting by not eating in the morning until lunch. If you want to eat everything you can in the evening, it's better to learn to have lunch and not eat in the evening. You can have lunch a bit later. 2 p.m. is the latest for lunch. Don't eat later than that. The lunch itself will already be harmful to health. Don't eat until morning. Intermittent fasting can also last for 14 hours. It's fine too. Eat at 2 p.m., then the next time at 8 a.m. From 2 p.m. to 2 a.m., that's 12 hours plus 6. It turns out to be 18 hours. That's a lot. You can do it from 4 p.m. to 8 in the morning. Then it's better to have a split lunch. You can even do it from 6 p.m. until morning. This is also intermittent fasting. At 6 p.m. there will be a second lunch, but don't eat a lot at 6 p.m. You can eat the first lunch at 12 p.m., then at 6 p.m., and then don't eat any more. Or eat at 11 a.m. and then at 5 or 4 p.m. There should be a gap between meals. Women have weaker digestion than men, so they like to snack. There's nothing wrong with that. You can have small, frequent meals. It's just important in this case to do fasting. If you have frequent small meals, the body doesn't have time to cleanse itself, so you need to do fasting. If a woman needs to eat 4 or 5 times a day because she can't eat much at once, as her digestion is weak, she eats little by little, then she needs to do fasting. The best way is to fast for 24 hours from morning to morning. Some people think it's from noon to noon. At noon you'll stuff yourself, and the next noon you'll stuff yourself again. This is no longer fasting, but your lifestyle. Fasting means you have a light breakfast, and the next time you eat again a light breakfast. Then you have 24 hours of fasting. To break fasting in the evening is bad for your health. You can break the fast at noon, you can do it in the morning, but to do it in the evening is harmful to health. The best time is in the morning. That's the best option. There are 2 options for fasting, from morning to morning or from evening to morning. If you fast for 24 hours, it's from morning to morning. If 36 hours, it's from evening to morning. If 48 hours, it's from morning to morning. If 60 hours, it's from evening to morning. Fasting during the nights when you sleep is the best. 1 night and 1 day, 24 hours or 2 nights and 1 day, 36 hours or 2 nights and 2 days, 48 hours or 3 nights and 2 days, 60 hours. Fasting is the last asceticism practice. First, you need to do well cleansing with water and static exercises. Then work through dynamic tension well. Only then should you start fasting. But intermittent eating can be done by everyone, even if you haven't worked through static and dynamic tension. When is fasting dangerous? When something starts to hurt or one becomes very weak. During fasting, you're dealing with the energy of the sun, which is the most dangerous energy. You always need to watch yourself very carefully when you're fasting. You might get dizzy, you might faint, you might feel stabbing pains or weakness or something else. The most dangerous type of fasting is fasting on milk. Some people think that to have children you need to do fasting on milk. When you have a very strong, clean body, you do dynamic and static exercises. You can practice fasting on milk, but only on diluted milk. This fasting doesn't cleanse the body. It strengthens female hormones, gives pure goodness to men's psyche, but cleansing doesn't happen. Cleansing only happens during water fasting, fasting on greens, and dry fasting. That's it. There's no other way. If you add a little bit of honey, some fruits, it's no longer cleansing. You need to understand that cleansing any energetic blockages, including toxins, is not even a matter of 3 months. There are 2 types of blockages, in the physical body and in the subtle energy body. There are shrotas, the subtle energy channels that are connected to the physical body. They have small blockages somewhere around 1 data. Data is 1/7 of an energy layer. 1/7 is the maximum size of a blockage. Blockages in shrotas cause all diseases. Blockages in Ida Nadi, or in the subtle energy body, take even longer to cleanse. To clear a blockage in shrotas, it takes about 8 to 9 months, doing asceticism practices according to a schedule. To remove a blockage in Ida Nadi, it takes 1.5 to 3 years, depending on how big the blockage is. If you have mental problems, it's a blockage in Ida Nadi. This means your character will change in about 3 years. If you have problems in your physical body, treatment starts after about 8 months of cleansing. If you want to cleanse through fasting, don't rush to increase the duration of fasting if you're not a young person. For about 3 months to 24-hour fasting, you can fast for 24 hours once a week for 36 hours, once every 2 weeks for 48 hours, once every 3 weeks, and for 60 hours once a month. This is comfortable cleansing. Moreover, if you practice fasting for 60 hours once a month, you can do fasting for 24 hours the other 2 weeks if you want. 60-hour fasting should not be done more often than once a month. Sometimes this is called forced cleansing. You can fast for 24 hours once a week, then for 36 hours also once a week, 48 hours, once every 2 weeks, and 60, once every 3 weeks. Fasting for 60 hours once every 3 weeks is the most frequent. You shouldn't do it more often, otherwise overload will occur in the body. This doesn't apply to fasting on greens, which can be done more often. You can comfortably do fasting on greens for 36 hours once a week. Don't rush to increase the fasting time too much. Practice fasting for 24 hours for 3 months, then start fasting for 36 hours, then you can increase time. After a year, do 60-hour fasting once a month and live this way. If you can't practice fasting, that's fine. Do cleansing in the sauna. You can sit in water to cleanse 5 energy layers, then stay in the steam room as long as you can, and then again in water for 1 energy layer. The sauna represents the energy of the sun, so you always need to understand one law, and you always need to be very careful with it. If you've stayed in water cleansing 5 energy layers, the rule is you can't stay in the sauna longer than you stayed in the water. If you cleanse 3 energy layers in water, then you can stay in the sauna for 3 energy layers maximum, but 2 energy layers is better. If you cleanse in water 4 energy layers, then maximum 4 energy layers can be cleansed in the sauna, but 3 energy layers is better. If you stay in water for 5 energy layers, you can stay in the sauna for 5 energy layers. When should you leave the sauna? When you start feeling slightly unwell? If you feel a bit nauseous, then get out. Don't endure it for even a second. In the sauna, it's best to lie down to avoid temperature differences. When you sit, the temperature at your feet is about 7 to 8 degrees lower than in your head. This is not good. If there are many people, at least tuck your legs under you and sit like this. It's a more balanced position. There are 3 temperature modes in the sauna. How much a person can endure, they can understand themselves. There's a rule of 140. If it's 120 degrees Celsius, which is the maximum temperature that can be in a sauna, then the humidity should be 20%. Less than 20% humidity simply doesn't happen in a sauna. Evaporation occurs, 20% is the minimum. 120 degree temperature, 20% humidity. This is the maximum that a person can withstand. At this time, the cleansing speed is approximately 7 minutes per energy layer. You can't lie there for more than 35 minutes. If the sauna is 120 degree temperature and 20% humidity, dynamic tension and toxins are cleansed. If it's 100 degrees and 20% humidity, this is a more or less comfortable condition for cleansing. The cleansing speed is about the same, 7 minutes per energy layer. 7 minutes per energy layer cleansing means that you feel hot. You're lying there, it's very hot, and you're at the limit of your capabilities, which means it takes 7 minutes per energy layer. It can be determined by how you feel. Look how the rule of 140 works. If the temperature is 100 degrees, then 40% humidity is the maximum a person can withstand. If the temperature is 90, then 50% humidity. If the temperature is 80, then 60% humidity. If the humidity is 100%, then 50 degrees is the maximum. Humidity is never 100%, it can be 90% humidity, so 50 degrees is the maximum that a person can withstand at absolute humidity. This is already a hammam. Therefore, there are always 3 options. The first option, when it is very hot, it takes 7 minutes per energy layer, 35 minutes maximum. If it's moderately hot, not very hot, but just hot, then 8.5 minutes per energy layer. This means 8.5 multiplied by 5, which is 42.5 minutes, that's 5 energy layers. If it's not hot at all and you're sweating, then there's probably no cleansing at all. And if it's not hot at all and you're sweating, it means there is a cleansing process and it takes 10 minutes per energy layer. This means you need to lie in the sauna for 50 minutes, which is the maximum. So 50 minutes is the maximum, you don't need more than 50 minutes. Keep in mind that if you're lying in the sauna and you're not sweating at all, it's not hot for you, then there's no cleansing happening, you're just wasting time, and you'll feel uncomfortable lying there. You should know that when a person is experiencing cleansing, they feel comfortable in the sauna. This is very important to know. I told you the rule. If you start feeling unwell, get out. When a person is undergoing intense cleansing in the sauna, it's very important to understand the rules of entering the water afterwards after the sauna. If you enter the water before the sauna, there are no problems. Problems can arise if you enter the water after the sauna. The best thing when you get out of the sauna is not to stand up abruptly, and it's best not to walk quickly. It's best to bend down or even crawl, or walk very carefully. If you're dizzy, crawl. If you're not dizzy, walk carefully, because when you stand up in the sauna, you can fall suddenly, and if there's no one around, you can even die. Therefore, don't stand up abruptly in the sauna. Stand up carefully, walk slowly, exit the sauna. Don't rush, don't make sudden movements. When you've left the sauna and you feel fine, then you can slowly enter the water. Rule number 2. The colder the water, the more sharply your blood pressure drops after the sauna, and you can simply pass out in this freezing water and lose consciousness if you've never done this before and drown there. Therefore, it's very, very dangerous if you're doing this for the first or second time. If you feel dizzy, a little nauseous, sit down and rest, then only go into the cold water. Even if the water isn't very cold, if you start feeling very dizzy, it means it's dangerous. Be careful. But in general, when a person does this practice, staying in water, then in sauna, then in water again, especially to cleanse all 5 energy layers, they always feel dizzy at the end. The question is only to what extent. If you're swaying a little, it's not a big deal. Everyone experiences this kind of relaxation. But if you're swaying strongly, then it means it's dangerous. In any case, when you enter the water after the sauna, it's better to hold on with your hands, stand holding the handrails, if you've never trained before and you're doing it for the first time. And if you're trained, maybe there's nothing to be afraid of. For example, I feel dizzy, but not so much. I never lose consciousness. These are generally the rules for the sauna, and you need to know that a hammam cleanses static and dynamic tension and toxins, a sauna cleanses dynamic tension and toxins, while a Russian sauna cleanses a little static tension, a little dynamic tension, and toxins all together. There's a hammam where only static tension is cleansed, and there's an absolutely dry Finnish sauna where only dynamic tension is cleansed. There's also a salt room which is slightly heated, dynamic tension is cleansed there, and lying in a bath cleanses static tension and toxins when you lie in hot water. In hot water, accordingly, if it's very hot, then an energy layer is cleansed in 8 minutes, and if it's not hot, then it takes 10 minutes per energy layer. Now let's talk about cleansing in the sun. In Siberia, even in summer, the maximum cleansing speed is 40 minutes per energy layer, and there, you don't need water or anything else. If it's sunny in Siberia, you can walk. 40 minutes multiplied by 5 makes 200 minutes to cleanse all layers. You need to walk for 3 hours to cleanse all 5 energy layers in the sun in Siberia, but most often this is impossible because there are constantly clouds. If there are clouds, then, accordingly, the cleansing speed is even lower. In general, it's only possible in clear weather in Siberia. But in the south, the sun can shine strongly, and there can be clear weather. There are more sunny days. And then, if you really feel that it's heating your head well, it takes about 25 minutes per energy layer. Of course, in summer, during the daytime, cleansing can take 15 or 20 minutes per energy layer. But 15 minutes per energy layer means the weather is very hot, and it's better not to risk cleansing in such strong heat at all. It's always better to do cleansing while the sun is rising facing south, and it takes about 25 minutes per energy layer. It's best to do this standing in water. You stand in the water with your eyes closed, the sun shines on you. Accordingly, if the water is 22 degrees, then you should stand for 40 minutes, which cleanses less than 2 energy layers. Then you can walk in the open sun. Without a hat, the sun usually cleanses a person through their head. It can also cleanse through the body, but cleansing through the head is also fine. And then you go back into the water at the end of the sun cleansing. It's best to cleanse with prolonged continuous movement or by staying in water. You can also do static exercises, but you shouldn't lie in the sun. That's the worst thing you can do. You can stand in the sun while doing static exercises. You can walk. You can sit in the water. Sun cleansing combines well with other asceticism practices, but if you're not doing anything, just lying in the sun, then it's dangerous. The sun can overload you. Overall, I've explained to you the methodology of asceticism practices. To learn more on the subject of health and healing of the body, please make sure to read my health guide, available for download on my YouTube channel or on my Instagram page. Thank you very much, and see you soon.